I'm
Well,
actually
you know what would solve this? She could just answer the question, then we'd all know.
Who cares? Who
Well,
cares?
we care because she's misrepresenting herself. Like, why do you not understand this?
Cares what she does with her vagina?
We care
What?
because if you're a trad woman who's grifting and pretending that your husband, you're fucking married. Yes, she did. Not only did she made a video showing that she did.
Hello, what up, guys? We are live. So we have a pretty fun panel for you today. We got Andrew from the Crucible, Corey, who's going to be arguing for the left, Torsia, you know, Lauren's been on the channel before, Destiny, you know, he's been on the channel a million times, and his lovely friends. So we're going to be debating two different topics. The first topic that we're going to be debating is the Me Too movement a good idea? We're going to let this go for about 45 minutes to an hour for that one topic, depending on how interesting it gets. Then we'll move on to the second topic. The second topic will be who's more oppressed in America, men or women? So those are the topics we've chosen. All the guests have been told the topics. I'm generally a hands-off moderator, so I will only get involved under two things. Number one, if one person's getting interrupted so bad that they can't get a word in for like a long period of time. Or number two, the conversation is completely derailing and it's just going way off track, and I feel like someone's just derailing the conversation. Other than that, you won't hear much from me. I'll literally just be in the background. The way I typically do these is I allow the everyone to give a brief opening statement, because I think it's good for you guys to know what the other person's positions are. 2 or 3 minutes, probably keep it under that. And then we'll just get into the open portion of it. And then typically we'll do like a minute-long closing statement. But yeah, I'll let it go for as long as it's interesting. But again, somewhere between 45 minutes to an hour per topic. Okay, so once again, the first topic is Me Too movement overall a good idea or a bad idea? And Andrew, do you mind kicking it off since you're first in line?
Yeah, sure, I can do that. So I would say that Me Too and the spiral of believe all women, I tend to believe all women, sure, but I also believe all men. So I think that men who say that they're innocent should be believed as much as women who make allegations. I think that's fair across the board. When it comes to Me Too itself, I think that the societal kind of damage which has happened from it has not been good for the relationships between men and women, especially in the workplace and external even to the workplace. The trust level has drastically gone down as men in positions of power don't seem to want to work with women very much anymore, including attractive women. I was just reading a survey about this morning. It's a little bit older, but I was looking up some of the newer data, and they definitely have trust issues. A lot of men have begun to have trust issues with women due to the fact that they can just be, accused of doing something that they never even did, and then their whole life gets basically ruined. So, yeah, I don't think in retrospect it was a great idea.
Cool, Corey.
Yeah. So on the whole, I would say overall a good idea. And overall good movement, even though there are totally some drawbacks in terms of what Andrew brought up in terms of, believe all women. There might be, in some instances, too much benefit of the doubt. However, if you just look at, the rates of false reporting and false allegations, like they do happen, they are a thing, but it's a very small minority. And that, to, I guess, what Andrew brought up of like a lack of trust in women, I would say probably overall poor decision making. If your concern is like the small minority, like the slim minority with false allegations versus hiring a competent person, especially if you look at education rates of women, you're probably passing up a lot of competence just because you have just a very small concern with false allegations. And like the trust issue, I think is like a non-issue. So like overall, on the whole, good. But there are some negative drawbacks to it. But yeah, that's where I stand for now.
Cool, awesome. Let's go with Torsia next.
Yeah. Here, I have a link for everybody. Put it in the chat right now. So until we can accurately report rape statistics, I think it's a bunch of bullshit. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, short and sweet. Lauren?
I really appreciated Andrew's opening statement, because I think the false accusations have played detrimental effect on a lot of men's lives. And I thought it was really interesting how Corey combated that with, well, it's such a small portion. It doesn't really matter that whether or not it's the majority or the minority. We just know that there are a portion of women who are lying about this and absolutely destroying men's lives. And the Me Too movement has actively changed legislation in a way to make it so that laws actually make it easier for men to be convicted or at least penalized, whether it's laws or bystanders in like school standards have made it easier for men to get penalized, even if there's not sufficient evidence to prove that they've committed the crime. Do you want to add anything? maybe later. Like,
All right, Destiny.
Here, you go first.
So the question is.
Or wait, are other people here speaking? Why didn't Pixie say anything?
I don't know.
Oh,
did.
I
know you don't agree
That's
with
why
that.
I don't want to like impose and.
Okay, so here's what we do. Since both of you guys have
Oh.
friends, they can get in on it, but I don't want it to be like where, like a massive, like like a 3-person in one package. So
Let,
you can
let it
either
go.
like.
Let it go.
Well, hang on,
Looks
hang
like
on.
fun.
Well, I'm a moderator. Let me make the rules. So you can like, for example, if you're like, oh, okay, we want you to answer this question, you can give your perspective, but it shouldn't be like you guys get 3 times the time because it's the amount of people. Hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, so you guys can all give your quick take in the opening statement.
Okay, quick take. Go for it.
Okay, so do I think the Me Too movement was overall good?
Yeah,
Yeah,
basically.
is it overall good or bad?
I think it was overall good. That doesn't mean it was perfect, but I think like men being falsely accused and actually having actual consequences for that actually were detrimental to their life. I don't think that was a very common occurrence. However, I do think that there were certain behaviors that were just put in with like oh, if a guy smiles at you, it's this and that. I don't think that. I think there was times and certain behaviors that weren't actually that bad that women were perceiving as bad just because it was the internet, and then it was. So I do think that happened. I don't want to ramble.
Cool.
Hi guys. All right. I would say that with any movement, there's going to be people who piggyback on it who don't have good intentions, but overall, it had to happen. Otherwise, it would just keep continuing to be ignored that women are treated like they're just accessible.
Yeah, I think we're all in of this camp. We all agree. I think it was a good idea, good movement. Sometimes it goes a little bit too far, but I think that the false like men rape accusations or whatever, I think are drastically overblown. I know there are a few big cases where it's happened, but I think overall having people talking more about this is probably the most important thing that's come out about this.
Cool. All right, we're gonna move to the open panel part. So anyone just have at it. Let the bloodbath begin.
I have a question actually for Lauren, because you brought up laws were passed that allowed, let's say convictions or something as a result of insufficient evidence. So what laws were passed specifically?
That's actually a really good question. So they changed the evidentiary standards in a lot of states for how women are required to testify. So you have like a Sixth Amendment constitutional right to like face your accuser, and they've changed some of the constitutionality. So for instance, in child essay cases, a lot of times children don't actually have to go up on the stand. They could do a deposition, they could talk beforehand because it's a child. And they've shifted some of the laws to also affect women in the same way that they've protected children in the past. And then not just actual state laws, there's also school policies, and that's the big one for me. So for instance, like the UC policy on how to affect or how to deal with sexual assault accusations completely changed. So as soon as someone is accused of sexual assault, they believe the woman, as opposed to doing before, like, and they start the process of like removing the man from her classes and then start the penalization process. And so there are men who have been penalized before. And a lot of the UCs in other schools have walked back some of what they've done because they went too far, and then they have curtailed it somewhat when they've penalized men who have been proven to be innocent, when women later came back saying, yes, I lied because I had a boyfriend at the time, or yes, I lied. For instance, there was, do you guys remember the mattress girl?
Yeah, we carried the mattress around.
Yes.
Okay, so like that's like a perfect example of somebody who lied and the school really supported her, and then they walked back some of how
Wait, did she end up, was she lying about her story or?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Was she? She was? Okay, I'm sorry. I don't.
Yes,
I
we
don't.
were.
All I remember was you walked
I just
around
wanna-
with the mattress.
I just want to clarify, because like you brought up so from what I gathered of what you said, when it comes to like laws, it seems like the large changes were just like use the example of children don't have to face their abuser. So women don't have to face their abuser for some states or some instances. That's the major change that has occurred overall.
No, they don't have to go on like they don't have to face their accusers in the same way. Different evidentiary standards are
Yeah.
lowered.
So what are the
certain
evidence?
things
So
can go
what
in.
what specific
certain
changes
evidence?
Like
So
just
for
saying that-
instance, like past acts are treated differently. So there's when you're trying to show past actions and evidence, a lot of the times you can't show just because somebody is typically, for example, just because someone's typically a bad driver, you can't use that as evidence to show that they got in a car crash on this one specific occasion. However, if you have somebody who's like constantly turning left when they're not allowed to at a red light, then you could use that as evidence that they turned left on a specific instance at that particular red light. So like there's the way that you look at evidence based off the situation. They used to exclude evidence. So like if a man was like sexually aggressive, they would tend to exclude that evidence in the past. And now they're making the statute so that they would allow more of that type of evidence to come in. If he was sexually aggressive in the past, then he might have been sexually aggressive in this instance.
Wait, but
Yeah, why is that a bad thing?
So just like I try to explain with that car situation, just because you were a bad driver in the past doesn't mean that you like actually got in that car crash. So just because you potentially could be a sexually aggressive person, or other people have perceived you as sexually aggressive, that doesn't mean that you were sexually aggressive in that instance. However, if you have a particular like sexual aggression against a particular person and a particular situation, I think that would be more like the left turn scenario. However, the
Wait, just a quick clarifying question on that. Isn't it the case that for a lot of crimes, like certain types of character evidence like that is admissible when you're trying to determine the culpability of somebody or having committed a crime?
So it
And
depends.
also
So
past
once,
behavior is a
like
good
I'm trying
predictor
to
of future
explain like the
behavior.
difference between like the two types of character evidence. So if you're trying to show like someone is based off their character, they committed the crime, it's only allowed in for certain situations. So like if you're like propensity, you're not allowed to show it for propensity situations. So it's actually not allowed in most crimes. However, with sexual assault, they are allowing that type of evidence in.
They're allowing what type of evidence?
Character evidence.
So the rape, you're saying they went back on rape shield laws? Because you know, with rape shield laws, you're actually not allowed to, and this was way before Me Too, where you're not allowed to bring in any evidence of a woman's past sexual activity in a rape case to prove consent,
Right.
for instance. So those things have been around way before Me
No, I'm
Too. So
talking
rape
about
cases
his
were-
sexual aggression. I'm talking
Okay.
about like evidence of his sexual aggression.
His sexual aggression. Okay.
There's like evidence that he, or people are like claiming that he, for example, wasn't taking into consideration a girl's like no, or was still like pushing forward. That now that's allowed in the court of law. That it's
Right,
like,
like,
as a character.
Right, exactly. So like for like you would know for what Jazz, right?
Jasmine. Yeah, Jasmine.
Sorry, Jasmine. So for most character evidence, it's actually not allowed to come into court for
Yeah.
so like I was trying to give a better example. I was trying to give a better example than the left turn and the bad driving example. But do you understand what I'm saying?
Well, I would even take that
I
example.
was trying
If-
to read for what so I wasn't completely listening. I was trying to read for what changes you're saying that Me Too, like which states implemented the changes that you're talking about. And I'm seeing a lot of changes that actually are good, like the way that they started extending statute of limitations, throwing out NDAs. Like I think those are changes that came out of the Me Too movement that were largely good, because it is really hard to get to actually get a successful rape conviction. And those are some of the barriers that were getting in the way. Better testing and for the rape kits, all of that. So I think
the statute of limitations is actually like a really interesting example, because when you look up, I think the reason that you have the statute of limitations in the first place is because you lose evidentiary value over evidence as time goes on when you're trying to pursue it in court, from like the time that the incident happened until the time that the court case actually occurs. So you're losing evidence in between that time, and then
but you still have to have the same standard. You still have to prove it.
You look at the Trump case, you look at the Biden case, you look at all of these accusers coming decades later and accusing them of sexual assault. And because we have these statute of limitations extended, it's making it easier for women to make accusations. And I think it's giving them more of an out for
not actually
Now, Lauren,
getting a conviction, because this burden of proof is still the same.
I have
So
James.
even if they can make the accusations later on, that doesn't help them if they don't have the evidence. That actually makes it harder, like you're saying.
Absolutely. If you accuse someone 20 years later with less evidence, people are going to be way more forgiving than if you accuse somebody a week later and have no evidence.
Lauren, James Sexton, who's a New York divorce attorney, he's pretty high profile. He's in my chat and he says you're full of shit and you don't know what you're talking about.
I love James Sexton. Yeah,
Okay.
I don't.
And
Wait,
that
wait, are you talking
Proof
about
is still
Lauren
the
or
burden of
no,
proof.
he
The
feels
jury
like he
gets
needs to explain
instructions. They
this to
can't
you.
just say, "Well, we feel like And now, sorry, I don't want to take too much Destiny's of my time.
No, you're good.
But
Wow.
can you be more like
I-
specific on what part was full of shit?
Yeah, I'll ask him. James, which part was she full of shit about? I'll get back to you when he gives me an answer.
Thank you.
He usually does that in super chat form, which is awesome.
It's nice of him. Okay.
And
Yeah, no, like I would say like certain things that you mentioned, like I do agree. It is nicer to have the ability to turn like I do have a lot of empathy for people who have been stuck in a situation where they've been assaulted like that. That being said, you shouldn't be allowed to turn around 30 years later and accuse somebody. There's a reason that we have the statute of limitations.
Are they extending it that long? I don't know how long they're
I don't
extending
know.
it.
You're saying that they're extending the statute of limitations.
Yeah,
What-
I can look into it more.
Can
But I
you
don't think
look
it's
at the
going to
exact
30
number?
years. And
So-
are you actually seeing where this is actually leading to? Because what I would say is that if they're extending the statute of limitations and these women are taking these men to court and actually getting a conviction and they're being found guilty, you're saying that they're being found guilty when they shouldn't be? Is that what
Yeah,
you're
so for
saying?
instance, like the Trump civil case that just occurred, I don't think that there was enough evidence for a reasonable jury to find Trump guilty based off, just the testimony alone. But he was found guilty.
But how does this
Well, wait, can I
pertain to
ask a question on
sexual-
that? For the Trump case, are there, and I just don't know this, so the lawyers can answer, is there a statute of limitations on civil litigation?
Mhm.
Is there?
Yes,
Oh,
there
okay.
is.
Well,
Gotcha.
Sexton
But,
says
yeah.
that her explanation of the concept of prior bad acts is totally inaccurate, and the evidentiary standards related to the child testimony didn't change due to Me Too.
I didn't say the child change. I said the way that they treated women is now. I don't know if it was actually proposed or if it changed, but I saw something that proposed that they changed the evidentiary standards for women to reflect more
Okay.
similarly
So
to
is it a
children's
proposal or an
standards.
actual change?
Yeah.
So you have concerns
I-
with okay.
I
well,
saw
so-
changes in legislation during the Me Too movement. I suppose I should have done a little bit more research to see if it actually was a proposal versus whether or not it was enacted. But I did see changes in legislation or proposed changes in legislation that I thought were detrimental coming out of the Me Too movement, specifically the lacks in evidentiary standards when it came to accusing men.
Okay, but it's possible that's just proposal right now and nothing actually changed. So you'd have no issue if nothing changed.
But what wasn't proposal was the UC standards. The UC
Yeah, sure.
standards
But-
absolutely did change, and then they retracted on that.
Also, so real quick, so it seems like for New York State, in May of 2022, the Adult Survivors Act was a piece of legislation that extended the statute of limitations for, it looks like for civil suits. And then this act expanded the ability of plaintiffs to sue for sexual assault and unwanted sexual contact in the workplace. So, yeah.
Good job, Me Too. That's all they got done. That's it.
But I mean, also, do we want like an extension of the statute of limitations? I don't even know if that's something that we do want.
Well, given
Why
that in
not?
New York, the statute of
Wait, wait,
limitations was
You-
3 years.
Yeah.
I thought-
It was only 3 years.
That's insane.
Okay, that's really short.
Yeah,
Like,
well,
I
so
would
they
absolutely
have it
want-
done in kind of a sticky way. So the statute of limitations was 10 years, but it looks like you could only bring suit if you had filed an actual complaint to the police within 3 years. So they kind of have it set up that way. So if you hadn't filed that complaint within 3 years, then your statute of limitations has expired. So
Let's let Torsha get a word in because she hasn't spoken once. Go ahead.
No, I was just confused because I thought Lauren said that them extending the statute of limitations is a positive thing. And I think that's absolutely
I said it was
retarded. No, earlier when you were saying something like, can you guys hear me? You
Yeah.
were saying that you think that people will believe people after 20 years.
No, I'm saying they.
easier.
I think
Did
they'll
you
give
mean
them
that?
more.
Maybe I
think
heard
they'll
you
give
wrong.
them- after 20 years, they'll give them more leniency for not bringing hard evidence. So, for instance, if Pixie assaults me tonight and then 20 years later I accuse her, they're not going to be like, well, why don't you have, the sheets? Why don't you have your clothes? It's like, well, that was 20 years ago.
Well,
So
did
please-
you get a rape kit?
Right, because I could say, oh, well, it was 20 years ago, it was super traumatic. So there's all this evidence that is gone now, and like,
Got
okay, we
it.
just need to accept that
So-
evidence is gone.
So,
However,
so just off of word of mouth, that's what you guys were arguing?
that's my issue. That like, if you allow people to turn around and accuse people decades later, that's my issue, because you're going to be losing evidence, and the jury's going to it's going to be more acceptable to lose that evidence. But that same evidence, the defense deserves and has a right to review as well.
So
And if
then,
that evidence is just gone and nobody gets it, and then it's in the benefit of the woman because, well, of course, it's 20 years later. Why would she
Well-
why would she keep her clothes?
but feminists are also saying that right now, women don't, like, they're saying you should believe women because regardless if they didn't get an STD test or something because they were traumatized, a lot of feminists are arguing right now that we shouldn't care about that stuff and that you should believe them. And so a lot of people are saying, well, you need the kit, but you're saying that, well, it makes sense if in 20 years from now they don't have a rape kit. Well, what about the feminists saying, well, we should believe them now? You see what I'm saying?
I
Like,
think that if it's a shorter statute of limitations, people will have expected the woman to get more of that evidence and to do more of that. Like if you have a shorter period to do that, then you're more likely to gather that evidence within a reasonable time frame and
I feel like something that would help this, and this is an unfair burden to place on you, but I'd be curious if there actually like criminal or civil cases where it's like they did a really old rape accusation, but because it's been so long, these like evidentiary standards are lower, or like the jury is being way more lenient.
Just look at what's his face, Judge Kavanaugh, for instance. I think that's like a really clear example. She didn't have any evidence. She didn't know the house. She couldn't.
Wait, am I crazy? Did that go to court?
No, I don't think
Wait,
so. Did that go to
That
court?
was just like I think testimony during his like whatever.
Well, it went in front of Congress.
Actual legal
Yeah, but that's not-
consequences for these people, or like the court
Yeah,
of
I'm just
public
saying-
opinion?
I'm saying in legal consequences.
Yeah.
I could be
It was
wrong, but I don't think.
almost, it was almost a legal consequence to be not
Wait,
allowed.
that was a job. That was essentially a job
Way
interview.
different
That
thing.
was a
It's
separate
not
job
about
interview.
It's
Yeah.
not. It's not like you're not getting the civil penalty of financial, and you're not going to jail.
Sure, but like none of these statute of
have the whole
limitations.
position of office. It is a legal.
But none of these statute of limitations have anything to do with like Kavanaugh before Congress.
That's
they could
true.
question
The
about
statute
anything.
of limitations doesn't have to do with Kavanaugh. However, it's just like it's the only example that came to my head of somebody being accused decades later and people having leniency for the accuser for not having any evidence, for not having any knowledge of any of the people there, for not having knowledge of where she was when it occurred. So
Wait, if he was like fully believed, like wouldn't then he not have made it to the Supreme Court presumably, or like that would have been heavily weighted against him then?
well, it based off the people who were judging him, so the people judging him at the time.
So the people judging him didn't really maybe fully believe the testimony.
And it's kind of that was a super partisan. So I mean, that's why he got.
Okay, well,
But
yeah, so due to their partisanship, yeah, they were able to brush aside.
Let's bring it back.
accusation.
Kavanaugh is like very not related to this.
Well, I
You
feel
can
like
make it-
the most related one is like, what was the name of the celebrity guy that just got eaten up, the ex-Scientology dude or whatever?
Oh, it was Masterson.
Yeah, Masterson.
Yeah.
Like, that was a guy, but like the evidence for that it seemed like it was fairly strong. Like that girl had reached out to several people right after it happened. There were text message logs of everything. Like, I don't know.
That's totally different, though. But there are.
I know
there
it's
are-
different, but I'm just curious. Like something that would be really strong is like, here's a guy, especially a criminal conviction of rape on like no evidence, just because it was like 30 years old. Like I just haven't heard that happening. And the way that you
That's
talk
what
about it,
I'm
it sounds like
saying.
it's like a common problem,
And
but I
they're
don't
being,
know.
like,
It's
thrown in
also
jail.
you
Yeah.
probably. I mean, that's also because they just changed the statute of limitations with Me Too, right? So it's a
Okay.
newer issue. So we don't have decades down the future to see.
Well,
the
true, we don't have it, but you
consequences of
made the
it.
claim that like juries were treating it differently, but now you're saying juries haven't had a chance to be confronted with it yet, which I feel like are two different claims.
And I looked.
I do think that people-
it to 30 years. They're moving it. Most places are moving it from like 3 years to 5-6 years, which seems very reasonable to me. 'Cause
That is reasonable.
the
I
30
would.
years I'm not seeing anywhere. The most was that New York you pulled up was like 20, but most of the ones I'm seeing, it's like they extended it to 6 years, 5 years.
I would appreciate that. Like 3 years seems way too short. And if the Me Too movement did like it succeed in moving the statute from 3 years to 5 years, then I would say the Me Too movement had some positive impact. And I don't think that the Me Too movement was 100% negative impact. There were a lot of things that I really liked about the Me Too movement, such as giving women hope, especially a lot of women who thought they were alone in this situation, and knowing that there's so many other women like them, which is the whole point of the Me Too movement. But my main issue is that it created a major issue, a divide between the genders like we had never seen before, issues within the workplace, inability to like.
It highlighted issues.
Hold on, before we run down all
as
these,
in
wasn't the
sexual
argument
harassment
that
in the
this?
workplace.
Yeah, wasn't this argument that the divide already existed? It was just dramatically in favor of men.
Yeah, the Me Too was like encouraging people to come out, like this behavior is happening, but now we stand in like solidarity. We're no longer afraid to come out and call out the horrendous behavior.
Yeah, that is one side of it to be. I think that
Or the side.
it's too like it's swinging pendulum. Like I think there was absolutely the issue that you guys are pointing out, and then I think the pendulum swung completely to the opposite direction, where we have people being accused of like just the these minor microaggressions are now considered, sexual harassment when they're just not.
Hold on,
Do
wait.
those
What
actually
what
have
microaggressions
legal
are you referring
consequences?
to?
Like, are you, because there's like a whole thing of like, oh, if you say hi to a woman now, you could get thrown in jail. This isn't happening. I
Yeah,
well,
where's like
I
the
know other
microaggressive, like
countries-
criminal
Yeah.
court case?
where is that?
In
Where
other
is this?
countries,
Where is this? You're saying these changes occurred. So are you now seeing men in masses 30 years later being thrown in jail with no evidence? Like,
I don't
what are
think
you-
it's necessarily thrown in jail, but it's absolutely in the workplace. The way that the men and women interact is absolutely different post Me Too movement, and I think that it's
What if it's better?
more.
You just say different, but different how?
I
Do
think
you have any data
it's
to
a
back that
pendulum
up?
swing. Yeah, you have less. You absolutely have less sexual harassment, which is great. Like that's the goal. But then you also have you have like a unfair dynamic in which women can hold something over a man, in which men are fearful they're walking on eggshells around women. And I also think women are frequently excluded from male dominant areas and not as easily accepted for the fear of a potential Me Too situation.
Are they, like in the corporate world, you're saying? Or like,
Yeah.
just- Okay,
Like you haven't, so you're telling me you've never heard a man say, oh, since the Me Too movement, I don't want to work with a woman. I would never hire a
No,
woman.
it's not what a
I've
guy
never-
actually
I've
say.
never-
ever.
I've
Am I?
never heard that unless you're looking online. at
I think it can
comments.
happen, but it's going to be way more subtle than that. I don't think there's ever a guy like, well, since the Me Too, like that's basically you're like
I have
screaming like I'm a
literally
rapist.
heard
I've
people
seen, like,
say
I
it. I've literally heard people say it, and even if people aren't saying it out loud as frequently, even if they're more subtle, it's definitely an underlying feeling that men within the workplace are feeling.
I was in the corporate world for like 7 months as a practicing attorney. I still have my license, but now I do OnlyFans. And the things you would hear more are like men who would be like, "Oh, I really like your outfit," and maybe would be like, "I hope that doesn't make you uncomfortable," because they're afraid that it'll come off as. And you see that, but I don't see them excluding women, not wanting to work with women. I don't see that, especially among like
In your past 7 months of working, like
I understand,
I'm
but
sorry,
I also am saying like where are you seeing it? Who's telling you? Are you working in a
I
corporate
mean,
firm?
I have absolutely worked in corporate America before, and I mean, I've worked in law
Before
firms.
me, so since Me Too, and you've noticed in your job in the corporate world that you're working. I don't know what you do.
Yeah,
And you're
absolutely.
noticing that men are not hanging out with women anymore, and they're just, I don't know, maybe.
Well, I've
Florida-
absolutely had conversations in the workplace with men where people feel like they're walking on eggshells, where they feel less comfortable with their female counterparts, where they,
maybe they're just annoying.
Or maybe
You know?
like not to sound like a simp, but like if I heard a guy say that like, oh, I feel like I'm walking on eggshells after Me Too, I would just assume that guy is like a rapist.
Weirdo, yeah.
That's like,
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
the weirdest thing in the world. That's an insane thing to say.
Yeah.
Now, I think there are more particular worries. So this is one that I'm,
Wait. Why is that an insane thing to say?
because if you're worried about being perceived as a rapist, you probably have like a lot of behaviors or ways that you engage with women that make you come off as like a rapist.
Worrying about how you're perceived has nothing to do with the fact that you would. It's not entailed that you would engage in behavior because you're worried about being perceived.
I'm sorry,
that
but your
way.
perceptions absolutely entail the way that you act in reality.
No,
That's
it
all
does
that's
no.
where
There's
perceptions
no
are
entailment
formed.
whatsoever. That if you're worried about being perceived a certain way, that you are. That's because you're going to act that.
Somehow,
way.
I'm not
That's insane.
surprised that you would be the one to argue
No, but
against
they're
this point. So,
behaviors.
Well, give me an argument back.
I can't argue against you saying no.
Against you just saying bullshit.
I'm saying that in any other circumstance, we're applying a different standard to rape here, okay, for whatever fucking reason. But in any other circumstance, if a guy were to like come into your house and he would just start talking like, "Cut, like it's so cool that you're like awesome with me," but like I'm so worried because a lot of people think that I just like steal stuff from their house. Like if a guy randomly said that, I'd be like, "The fuck do you mean? Why are people worried that you steal shit from their house?"
But guys like, "Oh, I just
no,
said hi
I think
to her.
it's
She was
I
telling
think
me
it's
to
totally
HR."
reasonable.
Probably just didn't say just
I think
hi
it's
to her.
totally
You know what I
reasonable
mean?
for men to say that they walk around eggshells around women if they perceive that there's all sorts of false sexual dynamics at play and false sexual claims that will be made against them.
But
and
a
I
man
don't
who
think
respects a woman's
that them
space-
worrying about how they're perceived is them saying, "Oh, wait a second. I'm actually wanting to do this behavior, and now it'll just be perceived that I am." I think that's a bad take.
Okay, but maybe not. But for a man to have that, a man who doesn't disrespect a woman's space in the first place and knows how to behave around women in a respectful manner wouldn't be afraid because he knows how he is acting in his work environment.
What are you
There's
talking
usually
about?
something that happened for there to be consequences, at least. So when a guy says, "Oh, I just said hi to her and they reported me to HR," that I don't think that's the
You
story.
guys hang out with like the elderly generation ever, and like, have you ever noticed? And it's just like part of their generation. They tend to be
sexual
like, they wanna
harassers.
talk. They're just like
They tend to be bigots
they're
as well.
a little cutesy. There's a little bit, and then we look at them and we're like, oh, how inappropriate and how wrong, and like, yeah, but we can't like. It's become such an extreme. We can say some of maybe we could recognize in society that some of the mannerisms that were tolerated decades ago shouldn't be tolerated anymore, but it shouldn't go to such an extreme where we're penalizing people for basically flirting. Like
I'm being penalized though. Is it
Have
just
you-
are they actually being penalized, or do they feel like they're going to be penalized?
no, people are absolutely being penalized. I don't know why
Unjustly being penalized, or
You're saying
yeah,
that, but-
I've spoken to several men who I feel have been unjustly penalized for
in what ways? Like
a woman accused them of sexual harassment. A woman has accused them of rape.
Did you speak to the women? Did you get the other side of the story?
Yeah, did you get the
Or
other
you just
side?
said, let's talk to the men.
Well, for one of the cases, like the case where the guy was accused of rape, it was a UC case and it was overturned in his favor. However, he was already expelled from the school at that time, even though they found that she had actually lied, and she was eventually expelled from the school as well. But at that, he played for their football team, and because he was expelled, he couldn't go back on the football team. There was no point for him to go. So he lost everything. He was heading to the NFL. He lost his ability to go to
But
college.
those are going to be less likely than
The other side
Than the
which is,
latter.
that women who actually
I worked in corporate. I was an accountant for 17 years, and there's so much sexual harassment in the workplace.
Yeah.
So much.
Yeah. So would you say it's still a net negative because a few men and so we're seeing legally
Right, a few
that
people
statute
are.
of limitations being extended to 5-7 years is reasonable. The workplace, I don't know in what ways they're being actually penalized and their jobs are being affected. And then in the school, you're giving us a few cases where, yeah, I think you could argue the pendulum swing too much. But in general, if we're looking at the overall question of was it a net positive, you're also saying, yeah, I also got rid of a bunch of sexual harassment and a bunch of women who couldn't.
Yeah,
actually
there's some benefits. There are benefits, but it's hard. There are benefits to the Me Too. However, there are negatives to the Me Too. And I think if I look at the overall picture of Me Too, I would say it's a net negative based off the way that men and women relate with each other. I think men are scared to flirt with women. I think it's made dating.
Hold on, wait, real quick. I don't feel like men are scared to flirt with women. I think that what's scary is if you're too autistic to realize if your flirtatious advances are welcome or if they're inappropriate or not. I think that those are the issues a lot of people are running into. I agree with that older generation thing. I don't know if it applies to anybody in this call or these two ladies, but every single girl or woman that I've talked to that's worked in corporate, any kind of corporate environment, any kind of even engineering environment, has stories about like the guy passing behind you that puts a hand on your lower back. Like all of these like really weird, subtle, gaslighty, disgusting fucking behaviors that, and men can say, and this is why I don't like this excuse, men are confused, men don't know what's wrong. That's bullshit. If I did that to fucking Myron, he would kill me instantly. Men know exactly where the boundaries are. Okay. They know exactly where the boundaries are because we know when we engage with each other, what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. But for some reason, women are like, okay to, I don't like making this funny, it sounds soy as fuck, but yeah, go ahead.
Are you not being flirted with anymore? I
Yeah,
mean,
but
I feel like
it's heavy. It's heavy
What
risk.
would be another? What would be
Risk
what
is
would
the
be-
problem. So if we're looking at this objectively, if you have men who have something to lose, right, it's very high risk for them under the pretense that there could be false allegations. Why take the risk? If you can hire a man for the same position and there's no risk, why wouldn't you do that? That seems logical and reasonable to me.
And yet the employment trends don't reflect that
No.
anywhere in the
Well-
United States.
Well, wait a second. 45% of men ages 18 to 25 or 18 to 30 haven't even approached a girl this year in person. So like that alone.
Do you think it's because of the Me Too
Yeah,
thing, or
no,
just because they're
totally
glued to
social
TikTok on their
media.
phones?
I'm
It's
saying,
because
I'm
they don't
saying
want
there's
to-
Well, I
probably
do find it
reasons.
ironic. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead. Go
I
ahead.
do find it ironic that Destiny, you called these people autistic. It's like, yeah, first of all, we have a rise in autism, and then and that is compounding the difficulty in the dating relationships between men and women. And then you compound that with this other issue of trying to figure out the nuance between determining whether a girl is flirtatiously going, oh, no, stop, versus going, no, stop, like versus whether or not.
Yeah, I'm sympathetic to these.
It's really confusing, right?
Sure,
Like,
and I'm
it
sympathetic
is-
to these, but like here, this is a super easy answer. And I would give this as personal advice if somebody asked me. If somebody came up to me and they're like, listen up, Steven, I don't know if this girl, blah, 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 blah. Here's what I would say. If you don't know, why the fuck are you flirting at work, you fucking retard? And I would call him a retard and I would slap him across the face. If you have no idea if your advances are unwelcome or if you're making somebody feel uncomfortable, why would you risk permanently destroying your workplace environment? That's like the worst.
Where else do you meet
You
people
wouldn't.
these
You would
days,
stop
though?
hiring women. And then
Where-
there's-
where
And
else
so far,
do you
Andrew, that
not?
has not happened anywhere yet, and it's not
Yeah,
going to
no,
happen.
well,
anywhere.
listen, the employment trends that you're talking about, it has happened. There are surveys on this, and many men have said that they don't feel as comfortable hiring women as they did before. And they have been moving away from that steadily, especially in higher positions. There is data to reflect that. You're full of shit.
Okay, I'd be
So
curious in seeing
surveys
you
are
link it.
different.
Like,
yeah,
Yeah.
surveys
Yeah.
are different than actual employment numbers. Like you can get all the men to profess that they're not going to hire women, but actually show me some employment statistics that shows a drop of like higher level management positions that there's
What
no
about the-
hired for women.
What about the rape statistics? Those are all polls and surveys. Are those
Base.
not valid?
Okay, wait. Also, another thing, Lauren, I agree that like meeting people in different areas is important. And work is a good place to meet people. But like, I think you have to look at the other end of the equation too. You can't just say, well, men don't know where to meet women except for work. Therefore, like every woman's like comfort at her job
Where-
now has to be held
Most
captive because men have
couples
a right to
meet
work
at
at
work.
Yes,
Most
thank you,
people that get
Torsha.
married meet at work. This idea
Yeah.
that it doesn't happen is like
A
stupid.
good thing I never said it doesn't happen because that would be
But you-
actually
but
retarded.
yeah, because actually, like 2 seconds ago, you were saying, well, if he wants to approach her at work, he shouldn't be doing that or whatever the fuck. Like, no.
No,
what are you
what I
talking
said
about?
was if you don't know if your advances are welcome or not, don't jeopardize
How would
your
you
job.
know? Who would know that? How
If
would
you
you
don't know,
know?
if you know, then you don't know. It's that simple. Hold on. None of this is different from before Me Too as well, by the way. If you don't know if your advances are welcome, don't
agree.
fuck your workplace up with it.
I agree. I agree.
So this
with
is
you.
And,
this
and
is
people still meet at workplaces. It's
So
not
I've
like
linked this
people are no
over-
longer.
I've linked this
working media.
over almost this is from Forbes, almost 1 in 5 men and about 6% of women report that as a result of Me Too, they're less likely to hire attractive women. This
That's
doesn't
great.
shock
And
me.
also, when you poll like 95% of women, they say they want a guy that's over 6 feet tall. People's
Yeah.
preferences don't necessarily map onto
So
real
they're
world
more
behavior.
reluctant, but
Yeah.
they're doing it.
Yeah,
That's
they're
what
still
I'm
doing
looking-
it.
Yeah.
the thing
At the
is
end of the day, you go for competence
yeah,
and given again
okay.
education rates.
But the thing is that that's not a good trend. And if that trend continues, you'll see this in other surveys, which are reflected with mentor status and all sorts of other things. It's not really so much whether or not this phenomenon is going on in real time, but whether or not the perception of it is going to continue to spiral in society. And it seems like it's going to.
I think we all
these
agree that
kind
that
of
would be a
gaps
bad
go.
thing. Yeah, we all agree that that would be a bad thing. Nobody likes that trend. But it seems like when we talk about this, the whole point of Me Too was to just punish poor guys, and that's the only thing that's happened. But the other side of the argument is maybe there's been a dramatic reduction in the way, or dramatic change in the way that men associate with women at the workplace. Yeah, there's a bad side to this too, and that some people are a little bit more afraid of engaging with women. But I mean, as culture advances, as people go on, like people will learn how to do it different, learn how to do it better. As Lauren said earlier, the older generation of men and women were creepy as fuck, and that's not the norm. Even for Gen Xers, and definitely not for millennials, and definitely not for Gen Zers.
But
So
when
it's a
we,
cultural thing that'll take over
when
time.
we aren't dealing with a massive labor shortage, a nationwide labor shortage, let's say in a few years we're not, which is possible. And suddenly you do have the same qualified candidates who are coming in, who are men and women, and you have a lot to lose for your business or something like this. Doesn't it stand to reason? Don't you think that a lot of those men would prefer to hire the man over the woman?
Good. Fuck women then, because they're destroying us in school and the workplace right now. Like women are on course to completely upend.
Well, they're not destroying us. So
Yeah,
you
in
can see-
education, in
No, you can
education,
see, hang on, you can see that, especially with trades and with education, the gap is beginning to close. And this is going to
It is not.
continue.
Maybe in
It
trades.
is.
What do you mean it's
Higher
beginning to close?
university
Women
education.
it's reversed.
No,
It's
no.
reversed.
It's
Listen.
literally reversed. We didn't close it. We reversed it. Now women are outperforming men in almost
2 to
every,
1
yeah.
in college. Even in med school, there's more
I'm
women.
not talking
Even
about
in
college.
STEM
What was it that I said?
Yeah,
I
you said
said
Nobody
that
gets
the
to talk about
trend.
the trades, Andrew.
Yeah.
We're not here to talk about
Hang
plumbers
on.
and electricians.
Me
What
Too's
I
a
said was
negative
that the
because
trends
potentially
between
in the
this pay
future,
gap.
This trend could.
What I said was that the trends between the pay gap of tradesmen and the college educated is beginning to close up. So no, it doesn't really tell the whole story to say that women are getting more educated. That's fine. If a massive education was about rewarding the best and brightest, almost nobody would be able to go to college, but almost everybody is. A college degree, as people
It's
are
still
finding
around
out,
35%
does not
of the
mean
population.
that you're qualified for shit. It doesn't mean you're qualified for fucking anything. And
I mean, even
it's
like
fast
the other
becoming
lawyer
something
in
that
here-
is kind of your nose is almost looked up at it because it doesn't seem like it matters. If it's not about rewarding the best and the brightest, then what
Wait,
ends up happening is the standard becomes
where are the
lower.
numbers on the college degrees are being snubbed? And people are like, no, I want a high school graduate instead.
So if you're talking about, like, let's take a field like sociology. Or
No.
things like
Let's
this.
not. Let's just talk broadly about statistics in the United States.
Okay.
This is not happening.
What isn't happening?
That people are like, oh, I don't want the college degree guy. I want the high school graduate.
No, that's not what I said. What I said
Okay,
was that
sorry,
the
that's what it-
standard,
the
yeah,
implications
the standard on college educations are that if more and more and more people have them, they become actually less and less and less valuable because you appeal to the lowest common denominator. You have to in order to get the most amount of people these degrees. And so a consequence of that going forward likely is going to be that people will be less and less impressed with your degree and more impressed with your skill set. And that's probably why you see the gap in the trades with the degrees beginning to close on the opposite side.
I mean, even with higher education, like, I mean, Lauren, I didn't know you, but I guess you're a lawyer too. We're almost half of the profession now. Doctors, women are law degrees less useful now, or?
Yeah, did we
Yeah,
just say we had a huge employment
yeah,
shortage?
actually, law degrees are significantly less useful.
I get what you're saying, but the fact that women, it's not like our LSAT scores are lower than men's. We're getting into the same schools they are on merit, and we're doing well.
Yeah, no, you're right. Women are dominating the educational field, but I think that has a lot to do with how education is currently being ran. And I think
Can you
that's
be more specific?
And I think that's going to go into our next debate about why men are actually currently struggling with more oppression than women. Yeah, so I actually agree with you somewhat on that point that women are dominating the education field, but I don't.
Can I ask a question for everybody? Because I would like to know if Me Too is so terrible, what would be, in your eyes, what would be a good way to deal with the sexual harassment in the workplace?
It's not that it's so terrible.
anywhere.
It's just that for me, at least,
what's a better
it
idea
wasn't-
than that?
Yeah, for me, it wasn't that it was so terrible because when it first started, there was so many things I actually really appreciated about it. Like a lot of things, like it really meant a lot to me. But then it got out of hand, and I think it ended up hurting our culture more than it ended up helping it. Even if it did have some successes, such as more conversations about sexual assault, changing some of our standards in the workplace and changing some of the statutes to 3 to 6 years. Those things are great. However, I think the way that men and women communicate with each other now are vastly, has been strained. I'm sorry, the relationships between men and women has absolutely been strained from the Me Too movement, and pretending like that's not true, it seems quite silly to me. And there's other things, and I think that men being falsely accused of this horrible thing is at an all-time high, and I would rather have 100 innocent people go free than one innocent man. 100 guilty people go free than one innocent man in jail. And I feel like this is like one of the worst things
to jail.
But
Yeah,
you would
we
want
have an
100 men who
example.
raped a
Rape
woman
people,
to
to
go
walk free.
because one man.
and have
Who you can't name?
innocent- I would rather have 100
You don't
guilty
think the
men.
woman who's
be
raped got
free.
damaged like for life as well, or many, many years, probably her whole life?
I'm sorry. Are you guys for putting innocent people in jail? Like, what?
No, no,
what
no, but it's just-
what portion do you think is fair? What? Okay, let me ask a
If it was
legitimate question.
50-50,
If
okay,
the
but
legal
we had
system is
100?
working, if the legal system is working for every person who committed a crime who is not convicted, how many innocent people should be locked up?
Which innocent
Is
person
it-
got
wait,
locked up?
Isn't it literally
But
one?
you would rather 100
What-
men go free
I
versus
would. My point being is, I don't want
That's a
any
trick
innocent
question.
men in jail.
Yeah.
My
Hold on, wait,
point
wait.
is
Can I just evidentiary
innocent-
question?
or but you'd rather have, but you're
But do you-
okay with having them go free.
That
I
Yeah.
would rather. I don't want. I would if you committed
it's
a
a
crime.
horrible
like,
situation.
Well, no, we have
if
to answer the
you
question. You want
committed a
100 rapists?
crime,
It's a
Yeah.
horrible situation, but women can just take it, and that's part of being a woman.
She's saying if she has to pick one of those, she's going to pick that one, right? So she's not saying she prefers it. She's just saying that's the one that she would pick if she had to pick between those two.
Well, and then also, hold on, just a question for the United States. For a criminal conviction, it's like I've heard, I don't know what they teach you in law school. Is it 90 or 99% for beyond a reasonable doubt?
Beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yeah, that's standard. Is it 90? Like preponderance of evidence is
Yeah,
51?
51. No,
No.
it's 90. It's like super like.
Yeah. So let's say beyond a reasonable doubt.
Shut up. There's no number system to
There's
it.
no number. That's why when you asked, I was kind of like, but preponderance of the evidence is over half.
I thought preponderance
Yeah,
of
it
evidence
is.
is basically
That-
over half, and beyond a reasonable doubt is.
Yeah,
Evidence,
preponderance of
sure,
the
but-
evidence is
But
over
hold on,
half, but
but
I
hold on.
never knew beyond a reasonable doubt. We
Yeah,
never
yeah.
were
But also,
like,
hold on,
oh,
wait. Beyond a reasonable doubt, right? That phrase, that doesn't mean 100%. It doesn't say
no.
only if you are completely sure. So even baked into our judicial system, some people are going to be locked up that are innocent because beyond a reasonable doubt could be satisfied by somebody
Yeah.
that. Yeah. So there's always going to be some amount of friction in a legal system where guilty people walk free and innocent people are put in jail. But to say that even one innocent person going free, that's unacceptable. So 100 rapists can walk free because one innocent person might be convicted. I don't even know if that's consistent with our current.
Misunderstanding what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say it is devastating to put an innocent person in jail. It is
No one's
more
disputing that.
devastating. Hold on.
Lauren,
It is
they're
more
not
devastating.
understanding it. We should just move on, honestly.
It is
I get
more
what you're
devastating.
saying.
Let me
What
try
about,
one
what about
last time.
1,000 rapists versus one? Like,
No, it's not a matter. It's not a matter of number. It's not saying that the 100 people will do X, Y, Z. It's literally saying that in America, our system is so good that when you have an innocent person go to jail, that's a really, really bad thing because to get them exonerated is probably not going to happen. Is
No,
also
also
a
sure.
really
Yeah.
bad thing when a crime has been committed and the person
yes,
goes
Yeah.
free.
it sucks. But
And so
what
if you're
do
saying
you think is
100,
no? But what do you think is worse? Having a jury convict somebody who's innocent into jail for the rest of their life, or somebody who commits a crime?
Hold on. Wait. You can't even answer that.
This is,
No.
I'm telling you. I'm
Stop.
telling
Hold
you.
on.
It's a moral thing. Yes.
No, the moral thing, you're absolutely dead fucking wrong. What's worse, that you put an innocent man in jail or you let a guilty serial killer walk free and kill 5 more people? Because that's 5 innocent lives destroyed instead of the 1 innocent person going to jail. Your whole hypothetical is completely fucking absurd.
Wait.
And you're teaching men that you can keep doing this. Like,
No,
you
I'm.
get free,
Oh
don't
my
worry.
God! This is
raping
like
women.
the trolley dilemma, is what we're saying.
No,
The
it's not.
at all.
No, it's
Yes,
not at all.
Definitely
It's
not
not
the
the trolley
trolley dilemma.
No, my God, there's never a right thing, is what I'm trying to say.
No,
but most,
nothing's ever gonna
I'm
be
sorry.
100%.
I mean,
We're
I mean,
human.
it does.
This is like a common
humans, we're
phrase
flawed.
that
It does
we
actually
shouldn't
sound
use,
like
and
the
we
trolley-
have two
the
attorneys
trolley
and one
dilemma. It
is
does.
you could have just said the
All right,
one.
guys, wait, let's go one at a time.
guy.
Let's let Andrew. Andrew hasn't talked in like fucking 5 years, so let's let him.
Well, I was just saying it does actually sound like the trolley cart dilemma. So I think that the question is like, would you throw the lever if one innocent man went to prison in order to save 10, I think it is basically the trolley cart dilemma. It's phrased differently, but I think it is essentially the same thing that you're asking her. So the answer to this question from you, Destiny, is what for this particular dilemma?
I think that our criminal standards of beyond a reasonable doubt are adequate in the United States. I think I like the way that our legal system functions, but it's dishonest to ever use the phrase, I don't want an innocent man to ever go to jail. Because if that's your position, you are at ends with the current US legal system as criminal convictions work.
Well, I mean, but you don't want innocent men to go to jail, though.
No, of course not. But you also don't want to set the evidentiary standard so high that you only convict on 100%, because that means a plethora of almost assuredly guilty people are now roaming the streets and committing more crimes.
And with rape in particular, that's happened far more frequently than the other way around.
Can you guys define rape in this country, please?
No,
Exactly.
based.
So it doesn't
Yes.
exist, or what is the point of that
so
question?
No, of course
You're
it
about to go on a
exists.
torch, you're probably right. That's where we're going there.
No, I'm not going to go through it all. I'm honestly fucking exhausted, and this conversation just keeps
You said
derailing.
like 3 sentences. How are you
I'm
exhausted?
bored because we're derailing into so many different things. Like
It's not derailing. It's an
No, this is-
integral
the
part of the
reason
conversation.
I've let it go is because I do actually feel this is on topic, because it is an interesting philosophical discussion, right? Like, okay, what is better in terms of outcomes? Is it better that 100 guilty people walk, or one innocent person goes to jail, right? I'm not going to give my answer because I'm the moderator, but it is an interesting discussion. I do think it factors into the Me Too discussion, which is why I've allowed it to go on for that long. But if you guys want to like move on, we
Can
can do that. But
Can I
do think
correct
it's- Yeah, go ahead.
Lauren? If maybe I'm mistaken, but I think what you meant to say was, would you rather let one rapist walk free, or the one innocent man in jail?
No,
'Cause-
that's not what
She
no,
said
I-
that
There's a common saying. I'm surprised no one on panel
no,
has
it is common. That's what
it's
I'm
a common
asking you.
saying to say I'd rather have 100 innocent or 100 guilty men go free than one innocent man in jail. It's
Yeah,
like
that could be a
and it's
common
based
saying,
off and it's based off why we have the American legal system set up the way it is.
Yeah,
which
but
I
she's
think
still
is so
asking.
funny
She's
that
still asking the
Destiny
question,
brings
though.
up the point.
So why not
that
have no doubt? Why it might
literally
be
that's
unreasonable
why
doubt?
the American system is the way it is. And Destiny's like, well, then you don't like the American. No, I like the American system. It's set up specifically because we would rather have 100
No, but that's not true, because if it was so, then our
Oh,
standards
yes,
for
it
criminal
is.
conviction,
Yes,
then
it
why are
is.
standards for criminal conviction so low? They're nowhere
It
near 100%.
is. Do you know how many cases prosecutors drop? Are you aware? And like
A lot of rape cases.
Wait, what does that have to do with anything?
we let guilty, like the current American legal system, we probably let more than 100 guilty
That's
people
not the
go
question. The
free.
question is, in the current legal
Oh
system,
my
can you convict
God.
without it being 100%? No, hold on. You're bringing
For a
up things that we
conviction.
all know that are
Yeah.
pointless assertions. Like, yeah, there are obviously cases where they don't have enough evidence and they can't convict. Probably that's somebody like guilty. We probably know that. However, right now in the United States, you can't disagree with this. You agree that the vast majority of
I
convictions
think
are
you're just
done
missing
without.
my point. That's
You're
what I
in-
just-
yeah, Destiny. No
disagree
one
with the fact
disagrees
that-
with you.
No, hold on. The disagreement is, Lauren. What
No.
I'm saying is, what
No.
I'm saying is, what I'm saying is. Yeah, hold on. What I'm saying is, right now, as it stands in the United States, our system is set up to put one innocent person in jail for every 100 people convicted, explicitly so.
Probably less.
Oh
so.
my God.
Probably less.
Okay.
I mean, a huge part of it is whether you have money or not. The legal system works a lot better.
My
for
point
people
is,
who
I
have money.
want to
100
keep
rapists
the
are put
American
away,
legal
like,
system.
0.5.
I want to keep the American legal
Love it.
system with a really, really, really high standard of
Sure.
who we can get.
I'm just
It is
curious,
extremely high standard.
Lauren.
It is.
We don't want it.
Can I ask a question, Lauren?
How has that
Alright.
been changed?
Yeah, go ahead, Corey.
Just to distill something, are you for or against capital punishment?
Ask him.
I'm on the fence on.
Okay,
Like,
but
you're
you
talking
know that
about-
innocent people have been.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why I'm on the fence about that because
Well, shouldn't you
that's-
be?
Can't you just say no?
Yeah, wouldn't you rather have? How does that? Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
difficult circle
I don't
to
believe in
square.
capital punishment.
Yeah, no, I understand that. So
I
all
want
is
to err on the
because
side of
the time on-
innocence, but capital punishment, I'm okay with executing a few
No,
innocent
that's
people
why
here
I'm
and
on the
there.
fence with it, and
You should
I
be
think
clearly off the
recently-
fence and against
well, no,
capital
Corey.
punishment.
Can I finish
wait
my
a second.
answer?
Wait a second. That
Recently,
doesn't make
I
any
have been
sense.
leaning
Her
your
position
direction
follows.
Wait, hang on, guys. One at a time. Let's let Lauren
Yeah.
finish, then we'll go to Andrew. Go ahead.
Recently, I have, because of this specific issue where I'm not like I would having one innocent person killed is like destruction of our legal system in my mind. So because of that reason, I have been leaning away from capital punishment. That being said, there have been different, so some states have different evidentiary requirements for if you're going to do capital. So like they have first a trial and then they have a second hearing afterwards to determine whether or not they should actually be, killed versus, jail for the rest of their lives. And so I think that does help a little bit with like really, really, really ensuring the person is guilty, but that still doesn't negate for the fact that you're going to have prosecutors committing Brady violations. You're going to have corruption that's going to sway the system, and you're going to have innocent people on death row. And it's a very tough call.
According to your 2014 study, the number is about 4%. 4% of people who got capital punishment who were turned out to be innocent.
Exactly.
That's terrible.
DNA evidence. Yeah, I know it's strange. But anyway, let's go to Andrew next.
Yeah, I was just saying, her position would actually be consistent, Corey. I don't understand why you said she couldn't hold it. It's not a dual position. She's saying she wants the evidence to be extremely high when it comes to these cases in court. She would still want the evidence to be high in a capital punishment case. She's aware that there's going to be some innocent people who are killed via capital punishment, just like she's aware some innocent people will be locked up in prison, but she still wants the evidence to be high. There's no inconsistency there.
But there's also no disagreement. We all want the evidence to be high.
Do you have examples of it not being high now and people actually being thrown in jail or executed more so because of Me Too? Like, I'm trying to put us back on track.
Me Too doesn't obviously affect capital because Me Too is
I know, but that was just about you. I'm trying to put us back on track because you were saying that it's a net negative, and that's because maybe even though we're putting 100 rapists away.
I didn't bring up the capital punishment argument.
I'm not talking about capital punishment. I'm saying that you're saying that it's a net negative. Okay. Because why? I'm just trying to get us.
I gave my points already. I think it has harmed the relationship between men and women in many areas, including dating, including the workplace. And also I think the workplace is one of the few areas left in which people even really hang out anymore. We don't really have like soda shops. We don't really have like places of meetings anymore other than the internet, bars, and work. So it's very difficult.
And this is all just your anecdotes that you feel like
what my question was, like, what would be an alternative to Me Too what would be an alternative?
It's not that, like, I think that people went into Me Too with bad intentions, or that a lot of the people that engaged in Me Too were doing the wrong thing. So it's not like there's one thing that you could do, and instead of the Me Too, there's like an alternative option. It's just that I think with the Me Too movement, there have been a lot of negative repercussions that we didn't anticipate that came along with maybe some of the benefits, including changing the statutes from 3 to 6 years. I think that is a benefit. Changing it to 20 years, I don't know if that's a benefit. And so I just think overall, the net negatives include the social interactions between men and women, the easier to get men in trouble at work, at school. And I think that definitely attempted to trickle into legislation. I don't have any specific statutes in front of me that I could point to. And
let's also let Andrew and Torsha answer that question, because it's an interesting question. So basically, I'll just repeat it. What should be the alternative against the Me Too movement? Like, obviously, you guys don't like that movement. So what would be your alternative in an ideal world?
I don't have solutions. I just think there's some things that need to be fixed. It's a multifaceted problem. Well, it is. It's a lot more nuanced than, what's a better idea? I don't know. Probably starting with how to define rape, because it's changed since the 70s. Probably getting statistics right. I mean, US was rated the most dangerous place for women because of the rape statistics. I find that to be shocking.
Wait, who rated the US as the most dangerous place for women?
Reuters did, I swear to God. And I heard actually a feminist talking about it. They call her.
Are you sure this isn't like of OECD countries or of the G7 or whatever? Like,
no, here I took notes on it. Let me grab it. What's her name? In
I also think we can all agree on the definition of rape. Rape is putting your penis inside of a girl without her permission. There we go.
For rape?
So the rape statistics, though, include things like intent. Did they try and stop? That's included, and that's absurd. Like they
What?
stopped. They didn't rape. Is my point. Yes, this is, and I don't know why. Like I
Yeah.
didn't want to go
Oh,
too
that's
much.
a perfect example, Torsia, of how like the statutes have changed. Like, think that's a perfect example of how.
Well,
the
it's
conventions have
the
changed.
CDC and the way that we report it. We have one group, the Justice Bureau or whatever. Who's the one? And they're the ones that do like the actual criminal stuff. Like they have the evidence, all that shit. Then you got the other ones who are just coming up with surveys. And there was a lot of discrepancy in like 2013 about it. And it hasn't changed about how they ask the questions, and that there's a lot more false positives than there are positives. Aside from that, pushing the Me Too movement, in my opinion, like influences women to think that certain instances, I don't want to say regret sex because that's kind of undermining other victims, but I think when you have a big collective group of people saying this is actually rape, this is rape, but none of it's following suit with the definitions, it's problematic as fuck. Because I know if men did the same thing, people would be pissed.
They
Or, I'm
changed the
sorry.
definition of consent as well, right? So they not only changed in the
Right.
statute, and that affects the statute. So if you change the definition of rape and you change the
I'm a
definition of
degenerate. I don't know the statutes.
So what behavior is now considered rape and actually leading to legal consequences that weren't before that you think are unjust?
So I think that is absolutely absurd that if a guy is going to have sex with a girl or something, then she says no and he stops, and that can be included in rape. I think that's wrong.
And
Wouldn't
the
you
statute
agree?
was changed. What state?
I don't,
what-
guys, I don't know statutes. I don't
Okay,
know
No,
that
Lauren brought up
shit.
the statute
example.
thing.
I have an example. So
When I'm
if
talking about statistics, I'm talking about surveys, or I'm talking about women who report to the police, not necessarily charge the guy though, because you don't have to. That's something
Guys,
that I
also
think
just a 5-minute warning for this topic before we move on to the next one. So just want to give you guys that. Okay, go ahead.
another example
Yeah.
of the change of definition is like with consent. So it used to be
Wait. Who's changing it? What are the statutes? I think because you're just like saying like these are
For
changing.
me, where I saw this occur was like the UC campuses.
Okay, so this
not
isn't a legal
legal.
thing, right? This is
So
just
the
like school
legal stuff-
policy.
I
It
haven't heard
does
anything.
trickle into legal things. It trickles
How?
they absolutely file cases. The UC absolutely files cases on behalf, and they start the case process based on whether or not it's gone through like the UC process. So
Okay, but
Were
hold on,
the
wait, you just
actual
said-
statutes changed to
Yeah.
include behavior that was not considered rape before, that is considered rape now. Whereas
Nothing has changed.
Hold on,
Since
hold on.
Me Too,
Yeah.
nothing has changed.
that's not true. So like with consent, so it used, and I think, and I
Consent,
really
maybe.
wish I had like the statutes, but certain places have changed. So it used to be that consent was if like you got some passive yes. So like if you ask like you want to hook up, or you show insinuation of trying to hook up, and she appears to be enjoying
Sure, hold on,
it
yeah,
too.
we've all
Tell me
heard-
the
we've all heard-
wording. Tell me
Wait,
However,
what
now
state
you need
how that
active
word-
consent. You need
No,
the
wait, hold on. We've all
absolute
heard these. We've all heard the stories before of like consent has changed. But if we're making a legal argument, what is
Yeah.
this? Because the
Yeah.
argument that you're making that like, well, the schools will bring charges or go to the police or whatever. My understanding would be like a DA would say like, oh, well, you guys changed your define consent. There's no criminal case here, unless like an actual legal like statute or code or legislation.
wouldn't
is
have
changed.
how
brought it-
important that wording is in statute. So if that changed, I want to know the wording and I want to know how it was changed to change consent legally.
I literally just explained how the wording was changed. So it was changed
At
from.
university.
Where? You don't have an example though?
I just said it was at universities. I
Yeah, but
believe
law.
certain state statute. Yeah, so I believe certain state statutes also have changed alongside the UC campus. UC, I know for sure, but I
school.
Is consent even like a?
Right.
Is that like a
So
legally?
it-
Did
or-
California
This affects
change? Did
men.
California change their
How do you
statute?
think this
Okay,
doesn't
she
affect men?
She's saying
But
that.
I'm not
like,
saying it doesn't
because-
affect men, but
can
you were saying California would have to change their statute for
I
their.
think they did. I'm
She's
not
saying-
100%.
She's
Go
saying
ahead,
that the schools are implementing things that can like get guys expelled and
But
stuff.
the
So it's
schools
not.
get
I get
expelled
it.
is
I know
different. The schools
it's not
can't make up-
illegal.
And they
Well,
also
no.
would go to
Jail for that.
No,
You know,
It's at their discretion because it's a private institution. But I'm saying it's not
women
illegal.
are public.
It's up to the schools. The schools can expel if they think this is XYZ. It doesn't have to be criminalized, whatever the fuck. Sorry.
Guys, real quick, I want to also let sorry, what's her name? The girl in the middle?
Lana.
Lana. Okay, I want to let Andrew answer Lana's question before we move on.
This doesn't like.
What would be an alternative to Me Too?
So I would try to move towards a patriarchal system where women were slowly phased out of the workplace altogether, and then that solves this problem.
Okay, I
How
disagree.
would
with
we
that.
survive and live?
The same way that we survived and lived for
the
most of
patriarchy.
our history, which is
Yeah, but
without
that didn't
women
work
inside
because
the
men would
workforce.
abandon their homes to go to other women. What the first divorce case was because the guy ditched his wife and his kids and went to be with another woman.
Which has what to
Wait,
do with
what?
anything?
I'm a widow. I mean, like, what would I
What
do?
does it have to
What?
do with anything?
It has to do with everything.
And what
How
does
are
it have
women
to do
gonna
with it?
survive? How will they survive?
The
if they're
same
not
way that
working?
they've always survived without women in the workforce. There was not a
How?
problem with the survival before women were in the workforce.
how
It
did it
won't be
happen
a
before then? Just say
problem with
that. How did-
survival post. Women
No.
are enabled to be in the workforce only through the usage of technology. If you look
Wait,
at
no,
the
wait! Don't do this diatribe. Answer the question. How would a woman? Let's say a woman
Right.
gets widowed. How does she survive?
she would probably remarry.
Why would
But
you
not
wanna
only that,
revive-
the assets of the husband always have traditionally gone to the woman. Not only that, there's usually an obligation from the family of the person you were widowed from, who's
That's
going to
assuming
help
the
you
man
out.
was doing everything right. Like the man was just working hard all the
we
time,
can't
saving
we
money,
can't
that he had
assess we
assets.
can't assess all of society just
But
based
that's how
on
it is
what if
now.
risks of what if a meteorite strikes you. That's
How
not
many men do
fair.
you think
And I'm
right
sorry.
now-
Hang on. Let me finish, lady. I'm sorry that a fucking meteorite might strike your husband and he might die, but we're not going to make a societal prescription based on that. That would be insanity. So yes,
But
there's
that's
going to be
common.
some unfairness baked in, but we can't unfortunately alleviate all unfairness from every situation over all times. We can't.
Isn't
do
it
that.
common right now that like the average savings rate is like negative for like people under 35? So basically, every widow under the age of like 35 or 40 is just fucked.
First of all, they're not fucked. If you were to reduce the women's participation in the workforce, you would see a massive increase in salary, more than likely for men. That would that follows, in fact.
No, it doesn't follow. It
How
literally
does it not?
No, that is
It doesn't
true.
follow because the number one indicator of like countries becoming prosperous and successful is women entering the workforce and starting to own businesses. That's like one of the biggest indicators of it.
He's
Destiny,
talking about
you're
prior-
familiar with supply and demand, right? If you have
Yep.
less workers, do you have more of a supply of workers or less?
You
of a
understand that when you go to high
supply? My
school.
question, like I just answered yours.
No, I'll answer your question.
Then
The
just say
supply
yes.
and demand X graph is an incredibly crude and simplistic way to analyze markets. Yes, of course, if you remove all the women from the workforce, the men will get higher wages.
Then why
However,
the fuck did
you've
you
also
just
got
argue they wouldn't?
what?
Why did you just argue they wouldn't?
Because every single economist in the world agrees with me and not you, Andrew. So maybe
agrees
there's a
with you
better
about
analogy.
what? You just
Agrees
agreed with
that when
me.
Women start to own businesses and enter the workforce with a higher.
Bro, you just agreed with me and my position that if all women were exited from the workforce tomorrow, salaries for men would skyrocket. You literally just agreed with that.
Trillion less
Salaries-
dollars in
yeah.
our economy. since
Salaries might increase, Andrew. Do you think murdering half the U.S. population would be good for the economy? Because now you've got half
That's
the
a
What
red.
happens, what happens
so
to
that- so that-
productivity?
so-
Like, what happens to the
So hang on. So
productivity as well?
phasing women out for one thing, there's a massive distinction between that and murdering half the population. But assuming that we granted your hypothetical and half the population was somehow murdered, salaries would still increase for the half that were here. Yes, Destiny.
No,
And what
that's
would
not.
happen to
That's just not how it
productivity?
works. There's
Yes,
no.
that,
productivity.
why did you
will
just
not
get done
find-
saying
you-
that's how it
no,
works?
I didn't get done saying. You're using a high school supply demand graph to analyze an entire worker economy. Workers are a supply in the economy. Generally, for an economy, when you increase your supplies, you increase the standards of living, you increase the GDP, you increase wages across the board. Here's a question, Andrew. If we look,
So you
if we
just
went
agreed
through-
with me again.
No, I didn't agree
You
with you,
did.
Andrew. I agree with you that the very crude supply demand graph might seem to support what you're saying, but there's a whole bunch of reasons why a crude supply and demand graph would never explain it's something entirely like wage markets for an entire society. That's absurd.
You just listen. You've agreed with me in every way you possibly can. You just keep deferring to, but there's other complexities which might come in. Okay, fair enough. There might be some other complexities that come in, but men's salaries, if women exited the workforce tomorrow, would increase drastically. There's no way around that.
And then they would decrease. Yes, your consumer base would fall. Your overall level of wealth would
Yeah.
fall. Your overall, like everything. I'm
Why
curious.
would your consumer base fall?
Women entering the workforce has brought so much money to the economy when you compare it to like if women were never that those changes never happened. So the economy has 100% been benefited by women entering the workforce.
Hold
Why?
on. No, wait. This isn't even up for debate. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
it's not.
Where are
It's
all of these?
not.
I'm sorry. Answer this. Where are all of these hyper-competitive countries that don't let women in the workforce because they want to be more competitive on the world stage? Can you name like one?
You mean nations which are in the West? They're all egalitarian, and so they've all pushed for this.
I'm going to
However,
restate my
we
question
can.
once you finish
Yeah, and
your
I'm
rambling.
answering your question.
You're not answering.
We
it.
can look at the markers before women entered in the workplace, and we were very prosperous.
First of all,
I
no,
think
we're
that's
not.
a
Number one.
decent
Yes, we
point. If you
were.
look
We
at-
were
No,
very
I'm asking you,
prosperous.
where are the countries that are out competing everybody else because they're like, we're not going to let our women enter the workforce because it's better for our country. Give me one.
But so for
Okay,
instance, like China would
again, you're
Wait,
making
Lauren,
you're
just let
making.
Andrew answer, and then we'll
yeah.
go to you. Go ahead.
Listen, there's a distinction to be made here.
You're not
That
going to
even
answer. You
if
don't
I
have an answer.
can't.
No, you're rambling.
So
Where's
I'm
Lauren
telling
at? What
you,
was
I'm
your
telling
answer?
you the truth.
You're not, you
Right
have no
now,
answer.
current,
Yours
right,
says
right now,
we're
current
adding trillions.
in existence in the West. No, I couldn't point to one because of egalitarianism. But I can still use the historic marker to show that those same nations, before women entered the workforce in mass, were quite prosperous.
Sorry.
I think it's
That
like a
doesn't answer his
decent
question
point,
still.
but it's
How did
it's a
that not
decent
answer your
point.
question?
Because he asked you for an example of a country today that exists today.
All Western nations were
I'm
prosperous
trying to
even
compare,
before
like,
women entered the
can't go back
workforce.
in
All
time.
of them.
You're giving me the argument that like women entering the workforce is like in like I don't know, has made it so reality TV has appeared. You're just correlating two things that aren't necessarily related to each other. The way that you would study this in econ is you wouldn't go, what was it like 500 years ago? And now let's compare it today. You would compare one country to other countries and you
In
would say,
econ, you wouldn't look at the historic standards. I think you would.
no, you would never look. No, you don't look at, that's why when you do
you
any
don't look at
econ
historic standards.
No, open the NDR, open any econ study ever. You don't say like, oh, well, 50 years ago, what was it like? Let's see how this, like, for instance, when you do minimum wage experiments, you go state by state, you pick placebo cities.
So
You
when
compare,
a Keynesian economist, so
I don't know
goes
what
to
you
the
mean by
goes
Keynesian
it,
economist,
if
bro.
a
I don't
Keynesian,
have the political
if a
term. I'm just
Keynesian,
talking about
hang on,
research.
stop. Whatever economist you want, but I'll just say Keynesian. If a Keynesian economist goes in and to a government position and he wants to offer economic solutions, wouldn't he appeal to Keynes and Keynes markets and solutions? And those market solutions are going to be based on those standards from that. What do you mean?
No, you don't go up to a guy and you go, hey, what about Keynes? Hey, what about the 1950s?
You do.
No, you. Okay.
Well,
For
first of all,
economics, of course you do.
No, you don't.
I'll even
No,
grant
you
you that. But they would highlight examples of, hey, this country implemented Keynesian economics or economic policies, and then this is how it played out, as opposed
No,
to
we don't use a historic standard. Remember, Destiny just
No,
said you don't
no,
ever
that-
look at a historic
that is
standard when it comes to the economy.
that
It's
is
most
exactly what
that is
Destiny
the
is asking
dumbest
for.
single
He's
thing
asking
I
for
have ever heard in my life. By the way,
policy that
Andrew.
banned women from the
I have
workforce,
never heard
and that
anything
resulted in
that
an
stupid
increase in GDP.
in my life. Now,
Let's
Andrew,
I want to
let's
ask you,
let Lauren
Corey.
talk.
Do you think that it's unwise to look at historic standards when you're making economic policy, Corey?
Across the board, universally, no, there are some lessons to be learned from history. But to Destiny's point, like making economic policy today, generally speaking, is driven by data generated today and looking at other policies.
Yes,
that
but
other
you're
countries
still
have-
looking at a historic standard and you're comparing the data. That way you know which is good and which is bad policy.
Can you give me
So
an example of a
how
major
can you
policy
make a
decision or
policy for the
single
future
piece of econ
with-
research that's looking back to the 1950s for modern day insight into how we should be doing government policy?
Oh yeah, well that's done all the time, of course.
Oh,
Of
then you should be
course.
able to name one time it's done.
Yeah, well, I can send over tons of data that goes over 100
Name one.
years
You
of
just said
economic
all the time.
policy.
You don't have one off
I
the
just
top of your
did.
head.
Yeah, Keynesian economics,
That's not
Austrian
a study.
economics.
That's not a policy. That's not anything.
No, hang on. The Keynesian economics is our current policy, Des.
You're fuck. Oh God, why am I getting baited by this? I'm sorry.
Keynesian
let's go on.
economics is our
Can I
current.
just
I'm
say one
sorry,
thing
idiot.
really quick?
Remember when Greenspan was like Keynesian economics? That's why we're going to raise the rates. That's what we got, like.
Hang on. I promise Lauren can talk. Let her talk, and then we'll.
Yeah,
move on to
so-
the next topic.
Okay, Andrew, I agree with you a lot in this debate. However, with Destiny's point, why, for instance, wouldn't China like force all of the women to stay at home and then have all of the men be in the workforce if truly that was what created the most prosperous?
One of the biggest problems right now is a labor shortage. It's actually due to a lack of human beings.
So
I
what
But
is
isn't
understand-
labor shortage good because it increases
Bro,
wages,
I'm
Andrew?
trying- let me finish.
Yeah, tell
Okay.
us. Remember the supply demand. graph.
No, it has not increased wages. Wages have essentially been stagnant. There
Yes.
hasn't been much in the way
That's
of wage
true.
increases at all, Destiny.
Because of women, and
No,
I
no,
think
wait,
that's
hold on,
a
wait,
lot of
explain
it is
it.
because of women in the workforce. Actually,
There's a
So
labor
I think
shortage,
that
though,
is the
Andrew.
issue with
Less
women in the
workers.
workforce.
What's
If you
that?
have more people in the workforce,
Yes,
you
it's
have
for hang on. Yes, Destiny. Wait a second. And since the labor shortage, that was basically the first time in my entire lifetime, probably yours too, where people could actually go in and begin to negotiate salaries because of this shortage. Yes, Destiny.
Yeah.
Okay, you get it now,
so
Destiny.
okay, you proved, yes, you proved your point. So then answer Lauren's question. Why doesn't China say, hey, so what? Okay, what was the answer?
No, you need to concede. So concede on this point.
Why doesn't China tell women
first back up and concede to the point that I'm
not
correct.
conceding anything to you because
so wages haven't been stagnant due to women in the workforce, even though you just said that.
No, they haven't been stagnant. Again, women in the workforce have increased the productivity and increased the real wages and increased every level of economic success, every indicator in every country around the world. That's why, to Lauren's question, why doesn't China tell women to stay home from work?
At this point, there is again a worker shortage, which is going on.
He's not answering the question. He has no answer.
That is the answer.
There's like a debate tactic, literally.
No, how is that not an answer?
Because I'm asking you, why doesn't China say?
Wait,
why doesn't China?
Let me see if I can bridge the gap. Andrew, are you saying that the reason that China doesn't tell women to stay at home is because there's a labor shortage? They don't have enough labor force to do that. This
is right now. This is a global phenomenon, and this has to do with the fact that China had a one-child policy, and it's the same thing with our fertility rates here. We can't keep up with the supply right now. We just can't do it because you have the essentially the 18 to 30-year-olds are going to subsidize the generation before and the 4 generations after. And so you need this pool, but we're now entering into this section where you have this pool, which subsidizes all these generations, is so small that you have a huge labor shortage across the board.
If we that's the one you need to why would getting rid of women from labor?
Hang on. I'm going to bridge the gap. I'll rephrase the question because I do see your point. Well, what about if we take a country like India, right? They have insane amounts of people being born. Why would they, like, following Destiny's logic, why would they not just exclude women from the workforce?
Logic. Thank you very much.
Well, I mean, India's caste system does often exclude women, and some of the Muslim nations often do exclude women. So I don't know what you're talking about. In this case, we're talking about a Western phenomenon. We have entered into a labor shortage.
China's the West
because of
Japan is the West.
I'm giving
the
you.
West.
I'm giving you a prompt. And by the way, yes, South Korea is completely westernized, 100%. Do you disagree, Destiny?
I don't know what your definition of westernized is.
They listen to they're basically a U.S. port at this point.
I don't know what that means, but okay.
Okay, they're basically, I mean, we run South Korea. South Korea is a massive American port. Our culture has definitely, since the Korean War, reframed South Korea. It's basically, it might as well just be like an extension of an American state at this point.
Andrew's right about that, but let's let him answer the initial
No, I want Destiny to answer to this. Would you agree that that's true?
I'm not answering it until you answer the China question. You haven't answered it. You're not going to.
You just made a claim. You said, what about South Korea? Is that the West?
Kind of. Away. I made this claim because you said only Western countries do this, but countries around the world.
No, I'm not saying just the West. I was just giving you a reflection.
I'll ask the question one more time so the audience can hear you evade it. If you said that removing women from the workplace was good, why doesn't China just order it to happen? Because it would be good for the country.
Well, like I said, at the moment, China is dealing with a problem which happened from their one-child policy. They're dealing with a labor shortage as well because this key demographic that they rely on.
All right.
How is this not an answer?
No, because you're saying there's a labor shortage, so they're not going to get. What?
He's answering the question.
No, hold on, Alex. He's not. He's saying there's a labor shortage, so they don't want to get women off of the workplace. What do you think would happen in the United States if we axed 50% of our workforce when our unemployment is like 3.25%?
I didn't say that you should axe it tomorrow. I had a plan to gradually phase women out so that women were more comfortable staying at home than in work. And so this way we could try to get our population back up because it's been
when you're bored, when you've moved off of day one supply and demand graphs, go look up like the lump of labor fallacy or literally any other type of reading you can do in econ to show how stupid this point is.
What is the lump of labor fallacy?
The idea that there's like a fixed amount of work in the economy, and if we have too many people working, we're going to run out of work for everybody to do, Andrew. That's not true. Like I'm pretty sure there's literally a famous quote where it's like 95% of stupid econ ideas start with this idea that there's a limited amount of goods and services for everybody available. This is not true.
1 minute warning. I've let this run way long because it's entertaining. I'll give you guys another minute to duel it out, and then we'll move on to the next topic.
Anyway, yes, there's obviously an application to historical standards from economists. Of course, there would be. Why wouldn't there be? Even if they're just looking at data from 5 or 10 years ago, that would still be them looking at historic data to make modern prescriptions for the economy. Not only that, they often go back and look at different policies with different populations, which worked, and work off of that, which is why legislative bodies often reintroduce policies that, at one time were introduced and taken away for whatever reason, because there's an ebb and flow. So I don't really even understand this. As far as the labor shortage, yes, we had lockdowns, people getting out of work, plus China's one-child policy. Here, our fertility rate hasn't kept up. We have a key demographic, which we need to get up in the worst possible way. It's pretty simple.
I'll let Destiny respond, and then we'll move on to the next topic.
I don't even know how to. I don't know how to. He's not even wrong. Like, that's how juvenile the understanding is. Like, when you start to throw like supply demand, like crude graphs to try to explain, like, well, this is how labor markets work. I brought up the lump of labor fallacy. There's a broken window fallacy. The idea, well, if you break windows, now everybody's working and, repairing stuff. It's not even based on like a bad understanding of econ. It's just like a total lack of understanding of econ. I don't know how to argue with somebody that legitimately is saying that if we remove all women from the workplace, it's going to be good because there's going to be the supply of labor is going to go down. So the demand for male jobs is going to go up, without acknowledging the 50 million negative external knock-on effects that will cause. That's why Andrew will never be able to answer the question of what are the successful countries that prohibit women from entering the workplace. And that's why one of the key paths for every country to become economically prosperous is usually women entering the workforce. That's just been a trend of the entire world.
Okay. Let's move on to the next topic. I want to give everyone like 30 seconds to just give their closing thoughts on this. Usually I give longer, but we're running late on that one. So if anyone has any closing words, let's start off with you, Corey, because we haven't heard from you in a while, and we'll just go in that order. So 30 seconds closing thoughts on this topic.
Overall, I wasn't really swayed by the arguments. I still think there are definitely some downsides to the Me Too movement, but overall, on the whole, a good. And that, when I asked for like specific like policies that were implemented, it seems like they just refer back to policies at university. So nothing has really changed the world at large on the policy level. So I don't think all of the negative claims have just been over exaggerated.
Is that the economy?
Hang on, we're just doing closing themes, right? Torsha?
I agree. Oh, now it's loud. I wasn't really convinced on the other side, though. I still think in order to address this issue, we have to get firm on statistics and really know where to pay attention. I don't know.
Okay. Lauren?
Thank you.
I think that a lot of really good points were made, especially about from the other side about the benefits of Me Too. But I think maybe I was not aware of some of the benefits that I was enlightened to today, but that doesn't change my overall feeling that the overall effect of Me Too has been detrimental to the relationships between men and women in most spaces, especially workplaces and school. And however, I'll give a lot of credit to my opponents for pointing out some good things, such as like the change in statute of limitations to 3.
All right, cool. Destiny and gang?
Yeah, I think our team over here basically just thinks that Me Too maybe has caused some more tension in the workplace, maybe has led to some people being falsely accused, although false accusations have happened in the past. But it feels like people are too quick to look over probably what has been a really large amount of good that's been done in terms of getting men to be more cognizant of being creepy or putting women in awkward positions in the workplace and holding some older figures accountable in ways that they might not have been had we not had this social push to be more aware of, I guess, rape and sexual assault in the first place.
Yeah, and I just want to add a lot of the negative also was speculative, they're saying that they're more reluctant to hire women, and that hasn't happened. So all of the changes that have happened for the good in women, less sexual harassment, all of that, versus, there's this survey and maybe down the line it will actually have some real world effect, even though right now it's the opposite. That's not very convincing to me. And I don't think anything was said that showed that in the legal world anything was really happening. In workplace, you were just saying, they just feel awkward. Didn't seem like real consequences were happening there. And the only thing you were really focusing on when we would really push you was school. And even then it was I know this one thing, or I know this one. And to me, the 100 to 1 and all of that was just not convincing.
Okay, cool. Let's go to Andrew, and then we're going to move on to the next topic.
No, I actually agree with Corey. I was completely and totally unconvinced by any of these women's arguments.
Okay. All right. So anyway, next topic is...
Even me, Andrew?
I was confused while you guys were arguing because you guys are on the same team and you're making the same point. But anyway.
Andrew, we were on the same team, and you still shouted.
What do you mean, same team? I
We
didn't.
were on the same team. Love you.
You guys both have the same position on this topic. Anyways, okay, so next topic is who's more oppressed in America, men or women? and we can kick it off in any order. We started first with Andrew last time, so let's start off first with Lauren, and we'll go in that order, kind of like clockwise, like this.
I think that men currently have a more difficult time in society than women, especially when it comes to laws on the books. The main thing that I'm thinking of is parenting laws, and I think of
Oppressed? That's the question.
Sorry, what was your question?
It is who's more.
Sorry, I thought the mic was off. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just wondering
It's more
the
who's
question.
oppressed.
Who's oppressed? Okay.
Or did you say oppressed or pressed?
Oppressed.
Who's more oppressed in America?
Oppressed.
In America, men or women? Yep.
Yeah, oppressed. I think men are more oppressed. You look at specifically for me, it's child laws. You could look at in abortion laws. So if women, I think the most important thing in life is your children. That's always going to be the most important thing to anyone's life is their children. And when it comes to the laws currently on the books, it is unfair for men versus women. And that's why men are more oppressed than women. I'm going to end there and we'll talk about it more.
Cool. All right, let's go next to Destiny and Gang.
Yeah, I think I don't know at this point. I don't know if I would say I don't know if I'd say men are oppressed. Men definitely have problems, but I don't know if there's like an oppressive force working against them in society right now. I think I would say that.
So would your position be that women are more oppressed, or would you say neither one of them is oppressed?
I think oppression shows itself in a lot of different ways. I think there's probably some ways that women still feel it. I think there's probably some ways that men feel it. If men do feel it, it has absolutely nothing to do with divorce laws and child court, though.
No.
But that would be my position. Yeah.
So are you I just want to flesh out a position. So you're saying it's like kind of like it's equal, or is
here's like the issue that I have right now. Okay, I think this is a Peterson quote, so maybe everybody will be happy with this if you're on the right. It feels like men, in the most broadest of sense, men are like have this bimodal thing in society where men are leading everything. They're like at the top of everything, but then men also suck the most shit at the bottom of everything. Whereas women like happily occupy this kind of more stable center ground. So when you look at like prisons, it's probably like 96% men. Or when you look at like leadership positions, like CEOs, people in Congress, it's probably like 60, 70, 80, 90% of that. So like in that sense, depending on where you look around, men are doing really good or really bad. And then women seem to just be gradually making these like really large macro improvements over time. But I don't know, do I say that like oppression is the reason why men go to jail, or oppression is the reason why men don't go to school? I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, unless maybe you could argue about the affirmative action thing, but that just got flipped in court. So in the Supreme Court. So yeah, I'm not sure. Okay, let's go to Andrew next.
Yeah, I think that De Laguna is essentially right here. I would say that definitely men probably see more oppression. And I think broadly, we would probably agree on what we mean by oppression, like kind of unjust push towards one group, something similar to this. We could flesh out the definition more if it's necessary, but I don't think anybody would have a big problem with that. Yeah, I would definitely say men. I would say that men don't give a shit about other men and never have and probably never will. I think the oppressors of men are men, but I think the liberators of men are also men. So I think it kind of stands to logical reason that, yes, men will essentially always be more oppressed in society. In this particular case, you have kind of the simp class of men who have now formulated through democracy how to team up with women, and they kind of go after different class of men. So it's almost hyper predatory at this point. But I think it's an interesting discussion. I can't wait to have it.
Okay, Corey.
Well, I mean, I echo a lot of the same sentiments that Destiny just went through, where there are totally issues specific to men, as was sort of already alluded to. There's definitely appears to be a higher education crisis among men. I'm sure like male suicide will be brought up maybe at some point. I know a couple of other, sort of largely men's issues, but, oppression, it's tricky. But let's just say I'm going by maybe just like political power and looking at maybe, the U.S. House of Representatives. I think generally speaking on the whole, men hold more political power, but I'd give like the slight edge to like generally speaking, maybe women are slightly more oppressed, but I can totally see the other side. But that's where I stand at.
Cool. Torsia?
I just texted you. I have to go, but I would say probably both of them. Unfortunately, I can't support that though. But maybe
you gotta go right now.
My mom keeps coming in here, so I'm gonna go help her. And if you guys are still on, then I can come back.
All right, cool. All right, we'll see you later, Torsia. All right. It's
Yeah, and
gonna be
hang on a second. I got to take a leak. I'll be back.
Jesus Christ.
I gotta leave
All
too,
right.
Alex. See you later.
Fuck you.
Bye, Alex. I gotta go.
Okay, bye. Can I just
While
exit out?
while I guess Andrew takes a piss, you guys can just get into the open panel part because since we got through everyone anyway.
Bye, Destiny's friends too. Okay, bye.
Hi, nice meeting
Bye.
you.
If you guys ever want to come on my show, you're more than welcome. And Lauren. And
Thank
Corey.
Thank you.
Aw.
Thank you.
So
Aw.
Sweet moment. Okay, anyway, if you guys want to get into the because you got two people who are saying one thing and one person who's saying something different. So let's why don't you guys kick it off?
Yeah,
I have
no,
a question for Lauren. So you were saying that in custody cases and stuff, this is where you're seeing that men are oppressed. Can you explain that more?
Yeah, so like my issue, for instance, it's not necessarily custody so much for me as like the abortion issue. So if a woman, so like I believe abortion's murder, and so like you are killing your man's child when you are getting an abortion, and the man has no legal ability to prevent the woman that he impregnated from murdering his baby. So he literally doesn't have any legal capacity over the ability to protect his own child's life while it's in the mother's womb. And then furthermore, people have discussed balancing this out with allowing men to like financially abort a baby. So like if a woman doesn't want a baby, she can abort it. But if a man doesn't want a baby, the woman could still have it and he would be financially responsible. So there's no way for a man to get out of the consequences of impregnating someone, but there is a way for a woman. So I feel like that's just not fair. And furthermore, as you know, like just determining parental rights. So like when you took family law class and you learned about the definition of a father, it was so wild. That was such an interesting concept for me because it's not just you're actually the DNA father. Legally, right? You could be the father in many states just because you either signed the birth certificate because you thought you were the father or because you were married to the woman while she was pregnant and she gave birth and you held out to be the father for the first 2 years of the child's life. And then you are legally obligated to financially support that child, even if you're not biologically the child's father. So that was these are just like specific instances that I think are extremely life-changing and have affected many families that only seem to hurt the men.
Can I clarify something? Because just to get your position clear, you said abortion is murder. So like in all circumstances, no exceptions. That's your position. So including rapists, and rapists have the right to force the child to term.
In my opinion, so like if you are raped as a woman, I think that's obviously like one of the most horrendous things that could ever happen to you. But what would be even more horrendous would be murder.
Yeah, but so can you answer my question? So a rapist has the right to force the woman to carry the child to term.
No, the government has the right.
Okay,
So,
sure.
like-
Yes, okay.
Can I ask a question on the?
I don't think any man has the right to force. There's no state in which any man, rapist or non-rapist, has the right to force a woman to carry the child to term.
Can I ask a question on this? I'd be surprised if this is true, but legally, I don't know. Are you telling me that if a man and a woman have a child and the father believes that child is his and they do a paternity test when they're 8 years old, that there's like a ton of case law and everything that like the father, if he decides to leave because it's not his child, he's financially on the hook for that child for the rest of the life?
What
Yes.
cases? I'm
That's
trying
happened.
to.
What do you mean? What cases? Aren't you a fucking attorney? There's entire
and I took
states where
family
that's
law.
the statute.
Family
Did you
law.
not
And
graduate
I do
family law?
I do remember the paternity case, like that unit in it, but I'm trying to remember. That's why I want you to remind me. Can you give me some names if this was such a big, like we all have the
What do you
cases.
mean? This is literally like
Or
certain
give me the
states.
case.
That is their main stat. That's the entire state. Like every case from that state is going to have that state law. What do you mean?
which state?
Just
What do you
look up the definition of paternity. There are certain states where if you hold out for the first 2 years of the child's life that you are the father, then you are financially considered the father. And like,
no, I'm not
asking
saying
for
you're
specific
wrong,
case
but
law is some of the funniest shit I've ever heard. I
was
don't
trying
believe
to
it.
get,
Graduated law school.
I haven't. Yeah, no.
Wait, hold on, wait. So I'm curious. In your world, then, let's say that the father does a paternity test and he's not the father, and then let's say that the woman finds the real father. Can she sue that guy and get child support from
No.
the real father and have the normal father at
No.
the same?
No.
Why is paternity only holdable by one person, or?
Yeah. So that would be only one person can be definitionally the dad of the child. You can't have you could have a stepfather, but there's only one father of a child and one mother of a child.
Okay, that sounds unbelievable to me, but I'd be interested.
It's crazy. That was unbelievable to me too. That blew my mind in law school.
When I say unbelievable,
I apparently dozed off in that class.
When I say unbelievable, I mean I don't believe you. That's what I'm saying. I'm curious if this actually occurs. I guess I'll do more reading on this, but
no, yeah, it's crazy. And I think a lot of those state statutes. So those state statutes were written well before DNA testing, well before. And I think it would be very easy to update those statutes so that, for instance, if you get a DNA test and you find out the kid's not yours, but there's certain reasons why they have that law in place anyways.
Okay, moment of silence. Let's go to either Corey or Andrew.
Well, I mean, I'm still sort of processing and just to really make it clear and hammer home the point, pretty much no exceptions whatsoever. Rape and incest are on the board.
It's not an abortion debate.
Yeah, I think that murder is.
Yeah, we are getting a little off topic, with abortion. More about, I mean, it does relate somewhat, but yeah, let's try to bring it back a little bit more.
That was an entire month of law school, so I'm just mind blown right now.
I know. I got a T25, got into T14s. I'm not an idiot, but I remember the paternity unit. But honestly, I didn't pay attention super hard in family law. But I'm trying to remember because I do have. This was 5 years ago for me. I'm like a porn star now. This isn't what I do. But I'm trying to, that's why I'm trying to be okay, let me look into this. What cases? Because a lot of, especially family law, a lot of those were based on cases. So I'm cases I remember stories. So I'm give me the story and I can look back and see what I remember. That's what I was saying.
Yeah, but from family law, that was the one class that wasn't
my family law professor. Really, he was great.
It's not even about your professor; it's about the type of class it is.
It wasn't. This definitely wasn't on the UBE bar exam. I can tell you that.
Oh my god!
This is definitely.
I literally took the UBE bar and passed it.
This was a question.
Family law was family law.
But this,
yeah, it was. So
yeah, but this was a question on the UBE.
This potentially could have been a question on the UBE.
Okay, that was
you
a
wouldn't
part
have gotten it right.
Okay.
No, because again, if I pass the bar, pass the UBE, I know there's a family law on the bar, but this,
what year?
What?
I passed the bar this year in two states, in Arizona and in Florida. Arizona is a UBE and Florida is not.
Yes. Okay. But and you saw this question on your bar exam, one of the two.
No. I remember this from law school because I paid attention in class.
Yeah. So, I mean, I got to the same place you did. I guess I just didn't study as hard. But my question for you is, was this on the UBE bar?
Because it could have been. It could have been a question on the exam. Now, not everything that could be a question on the exam makes it onto the exam, but it's absolutely testable material.
And you were taught it not through cases. You were taught it through I'm just curious.
All right, guys, I'm enjoying this lawyer cat fight, but let's bring it back a bit. This is I think it's boring most of the chat. Let's bring it back to the initial. I think here's how we can kick off this discussion a bit more. Maybe each person can point out specifics in which case the gender that they're talking about is oppressed. So Corey, for example, if we start with you, maybe you can point out some specifics ways in which women are oppressed.
Well, I would take the opposite side. I guess in this specific case of the overturning of Roe v. Wade, I see as somewhat oppressive to women, and I would just sort of in my opening statement, somewhat lack of potentially political power at the United States House Representative, where I think it's only a quarter of women. So I just think there's just an overall lack of representation. Now, is this the result of oppression? Arguably not, potentially, but that's more or less the lens that I view it through, of just an overall lack of political power that might be resulting in oppression. So yeah, it may not be oppression specifically.
I'm confused. Is it oppression or is it not oppression?
Well, I guess it's nuanced. Is a lack of political power oppression, given the fact that you have largely, men that are making the laws and legislation? Is that oppressive? Arguably not, or arguably it is.
Okay.
Well, I mean, that's what he's trying to clarify, though. Are you making the claim that
Yes,
they're
I would lean
oppressed?
towards the fact that, given the fact that pretty much at a political level, in terms of political power, that is
Mhm.
largely men that are making legislation and passing legislation across the board, then I would say that's lean towards being oppressive.
But aren't these men voted in by women?
Yeah, they are.
Then how is that
But
oppression,
it could,
dude?
but well, so it could also just be the fact that due to certain maybe social, environmental, and maybe biological factors, who knows that women do not run for office, and so I will grant you that over time, representation of women in the United States of Representatives has increased over time. I'm not saying it has to be exactly 50%, but yeah, until we actually get closer to that, I think there's an argument that there's some level of oppression.
But women are
I'm also-
voting
I'm
them.
also-
But hang on. But women are voting them in.
Yeah, they're voting of selected candidates, okay, that run,
Mhm.
okay, and from what I understand, it could be wrong, but it's largely men that are running of the candidates that, just as in like, look at the presidential candidates, et cetera, et cetera.
So do you think
feel
that?
like this
So
goes
hang on.
back-
So do you think that it's oppression then, if in a district, it's mostly white people who run for office and mostly black people who vote for them? Are you saying that they're oppressed because they're not? You don't think they're adequately represented?
At some level, yes, because then the question is why.
So then the
do you not-
representation must always be 1 for 1. You can't represent them any
no,
other way.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that the United States House of
Yeah, and I
Representatives
have-
has to be exactly 50-50. I still think an underrepresentation might be a sign of oppression. That's why I'm not planting my flag of absolutely there is an oppression. I think I've been pretty clear that I can see like both sides, and I brought up.
Okay, so let me just kind of clarify, and I'm trying to avoid like actually getting involved in debate, but also at the same time like moving things forward. So you're saying, Corey, that you don't have a firm position on this. You're saying you can see both sides of the argument. Is that correct?
Yeah. As of right now, like I said, I lean towards, on average, across the board, women being slightly more oppressed. But I'm not like I'm open to having my position changed. Totally.
Okay, because oppression, just to be clear, oppression is like an unjust system, right? So, for example, if it turned out that the reason there's less women in Congress is because less women run for office, then that would not be oppression. But if it turns out that there's some kind of
It depends.
system that's keeping them from getting that, then that would be oppression. So, just I think it's important to make that clarification. So
That is totally fair. So it just begs the question of like, so then it is a valid question to ask of like, well, why are there not enough women candidates? And the question is why? Is that the result
What
of
do you mean by
oppression? I think
enough?
that's an open question.
What do
Yeah,
you
okay.
mean by enough women candidates? Maybe women don't want to be politicians as frequently as men want to be politicians.
They have
That's-
different
That was
interests.
the whole point that he brought up.
Yes, I said it might be environmental, social, biological. I don't know. That's why I said the why.
Okay, ignoring that point, going back to your whole argument, it kind of relates back to Destiny's opening argument. There needs to be an oppressor.
Well-
Well, what?
It's just left over from how it was. It's just left over from them being repressed before. It's loosening up now, so that's why women are, coming into the government and political sphere.
Yeah,
But
they are so.
Yeah, like let's say
Yeah.
hypothetically, so like the feminist argument would be patriarchy oppressed women, and that's why they aren't in school. And now that we've lessened up in the patriarchy, women are participating in school more. And somebody might say, well, why aren't men in school? And you go to go, oh, well, patriarchy has kept men out of school because men still have the masculine expectation to be the sole providers of households. So for instance, during the COVID time period, more men dropped out of school than women did, I believe, to pay for their households. So people could argue that there's still oppression. It was against the women and now it's kind of against the men. But like at the end of the day, like quantifying all of this gets really, really difficult, I think.
Yeah. Also, just to be clear, we're not like talking about what people think. We're talking about what each one of you individually think. I do agree it's kind of harder. Like, oh, is it 40% men and 30% women? But just like we're talking about more. So like, is it slightly more that men are being oppressed, slightly more that women being oppressed by the system? So yeah, just to clarify.
I think it's so hard. I feel it so depends on like the lifestyle you live and the circles that you run in. Like if you've got like friends on OnlyFans who make a fuck ton of money for being women and being hot, then you might be like, oh, women have it way fucking easier than me. I work at McDonald's. My life sucks. But like if you run in certain circles where it's like if you're an engineer and you work at a certain firm and like 95% of your workforce are men and the 5% are like secretary of women or whatever, then you might feel like, oh, men are doing like way better than women. So I feel like to some extent this might be really localized. I'm not
Okay.
sure if you. Yeah.
I understand what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah,
let's
it's hard
do-
to say like on a broad level. Like even the thing that Lauren brought up was really interesting, saying that men kind of get fucked over in the abortion process because women get to choose when to abort the baby, which is true. but it's resting on probably one of the most unfair biological facts, and that's that every single child born in society has to be carried by a woman. And that is like a lifelong process of having periods and giving birth and all of that.
Yeah.
That's an unfair thing that will never be remedied, as much as trans people might want that to be remedied. That will always be a burden for women to carry. So like, is it unfair that men can't have financial abortions? I mean, like, it kind of is, but is it unfair that women's like half their bodies are preparing constantly to get impregnated? That's also super unfair, and that will never change. So it's hard to compare the two.
One is the difference is like we're recognizing biology and biological differences between men and women. And so there's going to be some things that suck for women that they have to go through biologically. And there's certain things that suck for men that they have to go through biologically that women don't have to.
Well, the problem with this argument, though, is that that's not true. Men ultimately do have a choice on whether to get somebody pregnant. It's called protection.
So is it-
Women
But
don't
there's
have a
certain
choice
things
on-
that there's certain things biologically that men go through that women don't have to. There's certain things that women
Wait, like
have
this
to.
is bad? Like what?
So is
I
it,
don't know.
so is it
like,
unfair that men are
More
stronger than
frequent
women?
kidney stones, like
What, women get kidney stones.
male
What do you mean?
puberty sounds pretty terrible. Your
Hold
balls
on, male puberty is
dropping,
way
like,
better.
men go
Yeah.
through
Literally nothing.
that like women don't go through. My balls didn't drop actually; they're still up in there. So
Men love having
I didn't have to
their
go
balls.
through that.
I'm
my
actually-
point being
I'm
is,
confused
there are
on
certain things
the-
that are biological.
This woman.
My point being is there's certain things that are biological that we can't change, and then there's certain things that are man-made, such as the law, such as statutes. And when you look at, so constitutionally, we're required to treat every human equal. If you're going to discriminate based off, you can discriminate based off race and gender. Race is strict scrutiny. Gender is intermediate scrutiny. It's lesser because there are actual distinct differences between men and women, so they have to write the laws differently. But we should attempt to make the playing field as even as possible for men and women when it comes to the man-made things. Not obviously we can't change biology, but we could at least try to legally make everything.
So didn't you say like there's strict
Equal.
scrutiny for race and now there's intermittent scrutiny for gender based on biological reality? So aren't the abortion laws also representative of a biological reality? That
I think they're
women-
doing a poor job. The abortion laws are doing a poor job of equaling the playing field. So they could do a better job by allowing men to have financial abortions or by making abortions illegal.
I mean, as you know, like child support is not gender specific. So in the event that if a woman gave birth and then decided, actually, I don't want the child, I want to give it up for the adoption, but the father said, no, I want to keep the child, then the woman has to pay child support too. So once the baby is out of the woman's body, everything legally is exactly the same.
Yeah, but that doesn't really answer to her kind of initial opening, which is to say that right now you have massive, or at least some cases of paternity fraud, which are going on.
No, you don't. Plinkett. You have to source it. We're a massive case of paternity fraud. Source.
Massive.
I'm sorry, that's
I
ridiculous.
literally said some. So
Oh, okay.
I
You said massive,
some.
and then you changed to some. Okay. So some meaning
Yeah.
what? 20% or 1%, Andrew?
I'm not sure how many, but regardless of how many, she is making the point, and I think that it's around 10%. I would have to double check, or it could be
10% of
between 4.5 and 10. I think something right in there.
No.
10% of children are fraudulently born.
No.
That's an insane number. If
I
that
don't
number,
think so.
Talking
Hang
about
on.
out of the ones where paternity
yes,
was
that
disputed.
is what he's talking about. I've seen
Yeah.
the same numbers.
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah,
that's
sorry.
what you're talking about. You're talking about out
So
of
anyway-
the ones where
Anyway,
not
but what
gender.
she's alluding to is she's saying that there's something which is also unfair here, which is how is it that men could get straddled down with having to support children which aren't biologically there after it's been demonstrated via DNA that they aren't? That seems like it's fundamentally
I
flawed.
understand what you're saying, but I don't think that that's the case. I think Lauren kind of misrepresented that. So
No,
there are
I just-
ways. There are
I
ways
just
that
sent you
you can.
something, Destiny. It's a link. It's about like apparently I don't know how, and I just
I thought it
looked
was
this-
1 in
just
9.
pulled it up. But
It's
people are
definitely
saying
not.
this article that I found and I haven't reviewed it says 1 in 3. The
Sure.
chances are how many
3?
children are genetic offsprings of someone other than the guy who they think is
1
his
in
father?
3?
If you have read or heard or watched anything on this question, you will have encountered many estimates from 9 to more than 30%. The idea that almost 1 in 3 people might be the result
Lauren,
of
I was literally
33%.
Lauren, I was just looking at this. You're right, but there's a clear, very important caveat. These are out of the situations with a guy specifically challenges in court.
Disputing it.
Exactly.
Yeah, when he's disputing it. And out of
Exactly.
those, it turns out that 1 out of 3 of them are right. So it is.
It's not one
But
of 3 of
also,
all
just real quick
birds.
on the
That's
paternity.
still,
law.
I think that is still pretty high. But
Well, no,
and then
hold on.
I am
No,
curious
no.
about the ones who
You have
don't
a selection
dispute.
bias now. You're looking
The
just
selection,
at yeah.
the selection bias is literally people that think that they don't have real
Yeah.
paternity.
Right, but
For
regardless,
this particular study, but then I would just because we don't have the data on
We
people
probably
who
do.
aren't questioning,
Also-
we don't have the data on people who aren't questioning.
No, but
Right?
we
We're
kind
not
of do. So they
questioning
call
we
these
do.
they call these extra
Wait,
partner.
hold on, green shirt. What are you, Jasmine? You're saying we do? How do we have that data?
So if you're saying that it's only 1 out of 3 of people who are actually questioning,
No, that's
so
not
we
what I'm
know-
saying.
What are you saying?
I'm saying on this study, it's people who are questioning. 1 out of 3, it's not the kid, right? So do you have the data for fathers who are not questioning?
right.
No, I'm saying we have the data. If we look at all the babies being born, what percentage are then found to be? We would be able to have that. I could look it up. But
That's
we, yes,
so
yeah.
that's it's literally that's part of the
Yeah.
outline that I made.
Yeah.
Andrew, wipe the Tucker Carlson look off your face. Jesus. Yeah, that was part of the research that I did for the. They call them extra partner pairings in the literature that I found, and it's like these broad surveys on DNA to figure out like well, how many children are mixed up at the hospital, how many children are belonging to parents that don't know the number of paternity, and from what I've seen, those numbers come out to anywhere from 0.5 to I think the highest outlier was 2.3%.
Exactly.
Yeah, but it's
that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Because if
So
we
okay,
have
so
that,
I'm
You
actually
think that 2.3? You don't think 2 out of 100 dads having
the
like
highest
being
estimate.
lied to? I think that's
I can
six
actually
people.
wait, hang on. Let me jump in real quick because I've been looking this up and there's actually some statistics. So the problem is that most of the studies were done 1991 to 1999. But if we go off those, it actually heavily depends on the country. So it is we're talking about like out of total, it's 11.8% in Mexico, but in France it's like 2.8%. And UK is like 1.4 to 1.6%. Switzerland is like 0.8%. So it seems like it also really heavily depends on the country. I don't know what's going on in Mexico, but a lot of people raising kids that are not them. So yeah, but it's around there. In Western countries seem to be around 2-3%. It seems like in Mexico it's just like
Yeah, and then also just a quick thing because
Can
this was
you
brought up
check
earlier.
Chat,
This was-
Alex,
hold on.
really
This was-
quick.
This was brought up earlier
Sure.
about paternity for children. If you have a child with somebody and then you take a DNA test and it's not your child, you can disestablish paternity. Just looking up on the Florida law, the things that will prevent you from doing this are if you like made other promises after knowing that you weren't the biological father. So I'm just saying on some random legal site, like if you allow the mother to put the name on the birth certificate when you know you aren't the father, if you promised in writing to support the child, if you signed an acknowledgement of paternity, or if you married the mother after you knew the child wasn't yours and you assume parental and child support
Yeah,
obligations.
and
So
this-
you can divest from a child if you take a biological test. You're like, this is not my
yeah,
kid.
and as you know, that's why you learn this stuff through cases. So I was like looking, okay, what were the facts? What did the court say? It wasn't just like, oh no, that's why I wanted to know.
Yeah,
And
but
if
is
this
the
was such a
Florida
big
law
deal,
representation of the standard in other states?
Well, if it's not, Andrew, I
There's
welcome you to show me a
every
state where it's different.
has their own laws. Every state,
Right.
especially when it comes to this sort of like family law. It is kind of honestly,
And that's why in family
Jasmine,
law,
I
we
do
get cases from states. You know that we didn't read a lot of.
Can I
Supreme
finish
Court
my
stuff.
sentence?
Yeah, sorry.
I was going to give you some credit here, girl. I was going to give you some credit about how it would make it did seem silly to me when I was taking the bar that to be studying for family law for a UVE test anyways, where every state is different and we're supposed to know like the basic generals of all. I always thought that was stupid for the particular reason that every state is different. So yeah, I understand why you forgot that family law was on the test.
No, I didn't forget family law was on the test. I looked, but I don't know. Did you take Barbary? Like Barbary didn't spend a lot of
Yes.
time on this question because they didn't. I would love to see your like case material, like the material.
Yeah,
you
okay,
used,
I'll-
because this
I'll-
was not
that's
the
what
way
the
you
lawyers
should
have,
study
like-
in family law. This was
send
not
you
at
my
all. That's why I was
Barbary
like, what's the case? But
Okay.
right? Like I'm thinking family law in regarding the Baby M case. Like there's things that you just remember because they were such big parts of family law. Maybe I was skipping class. I didn't see it as a huge part of the bar exam because those are the things that stayed in my head the most, and this wasn't one of them. So I that's why I'm like,
What
give me the
percentage of Barbary did you do?
What do you mean? What percentage of Barbary? Like 30. still
That
passed.
makes sense.
First.
Family law was in like the last 20% of Barbary. So you
Yeah,
didn't
but I
get
mean,
to-
I moved around. I did the critical pass flashcards. I did all the things. I know how to study efficiently and not just do the whole shit and still
Oh.
pass. So that's why if something wasn't a big thing on my mind, that means it wasn't highly tested. Family law, I looked, okay, what are the things that I need to know for family law? And I don't remember being like, this is a huge part of family law. So that's why I'm like, okay, give me the cases so I can see, because there's probably some caveats in there that make it, because if I heard something like that, I would probably be like, as astonished as you. That's why I want to see the cases and the nuances, see where cases came out differently, what facts were analogous, what facts need to be distinguished. That's what I'm looking for. And that's why I'm like thinking of big cases in family law. And I'm thinking of a few. None of them have to do with this. That's why I asked you, but we can move on from this. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
Let's let Andrew talk. We haven't heard from him in a minute.
Yeah, I don't really know where we're going with this, honestly. I don't know where we're going with
He's
it.
too busy gossiping with Rollo in his chat
I
right
mean,
now.
you
Not
don't,
paying attention
you
to
haven't
the
said anything
conversation.
either, Destiny. You don't know where we're going with it either. Where are we
There's
going
like a
with
little
it?
lawyer calf fight going on, but
Wait. Did you bring up Rolo?
No.
Yeah,
I said-
apparently in your chat gossiping. I think it's cute how you guys like gossip.
Did I? Hang on. Did I bring up Rolo?
No, I just brought up Rollo.
Yeah, you just brought up Rolo. So then the
I did.
question stands: did you fuck Lauren Southern?
Well, fuck.
Hey, you brought it up.
No, he didn't.
He did. He brought up
Not bring
Rolo.
that up.
You had to bring up
He
Rolo.
did not bring that up. What is your obsession with Lauren?
Oh, everything's
Southern
an
vagina,
obsession.
Andrew?
She
Oh my
lied about.
God.
You
Why
realize
is
she lied
every
about
red
being
pill
married.
fucking obsessed with Lauren Southern's
How do you
vagina?
know she lied about
I
being
got as much
married?
attention as Lauren Southern's vagina gets. It's just wild.
Do you know she lied about being married? She lied about being married. She's on your side in the conservative movement. This and probably humped that little gremlin, and you don't fucking care about that at all.
No,
we don't
I
even need to
don't
worry
care
about
if
it. No big
Comes to that
deal.
little
Justin, you're a
gremlin. Like, I
gremlin.
really don't care.
It's fucking crazy to me. Like, oh, we're just
I like
just
her.
let it go.
She's
Don't even
smart.
worry about it.
She's
No problem.
pretty, and it triggers men. Like, it's so wild. She's, oh my God. If she were ugly, like, that's, okay, I'm sorry. Never
It would
mind.
still be a scandal if this chick is lying
No,
about
if
her
she were
marriage. I'm
ugly, you guys
sorry.
wouldn't care, and you guys would have accepted her more, and you would have.
You're just
brought her
making
in.
shit up. I don't
There
give a
is
shit what the chick
podcasts
looks like.
Of ugly girls in the red pill
I
movement. who are
don't
doing
fucking
very
care
well
what
with
she
men
looks like.
support-
That's
Yeah,
not the scandal.
okay.
The scandal's not what Lauren Southern looks like. Give a shit
It
less.
obviously is, because all of you men keep talking about her pussy nonstop and accusing
I
her.
didn't
of
talk about her
fucking-
pussy. What are
I
you
have
talking
heard that
about?
Lauren Southern has fucked Destiny, has fucked Myron, has fucked
Tim Pool was
who
one.
else
yeah.
did Rolo say that she fucked? Like, Hunter Avalon. Who
What
else?
the
did-
fuck? Why am I
literally
left out of this
everybody.
list? I'm a little
There's-
triggered.
Lauren Southern's fucked everybody now. It's just so. Why are we talking? And even if she has fucked everybody, who the fuck cares? Why do
Again,
we care?
if you misrepresent that you're married for an elongated
She
period of
did.
time, she did.
Was married.
Not only did she, but she admitted to it, made an elongated video about how she did. What are you talking
Why
about?
do you even care
fool?
about her personal life so much?
Because she's supposed to be a conservative, a trad conservative woman on my side of the aisle. And if she misrepresented her own marriage, lied about it, and at the same time was humping a leftist, cheating, humping with, I think that's fair game for us to ask
So wait,
about.
conservatives can't fuck leftists.
Wait,
Is that
Andrew,
what
I have a
we're
question for
saying?
Andrew.
Didn't
Would it be
Trump's original
Wait,
press
real
secretary
quick.
wasn't he married to the guy in charge of the Lincoln Project?
Wait, sorry, hang on, hold that thought for 1 second, Lauren. I just want to explore this. Would it be like, I don't know if you said that last part as a joke, but would it be like less bad if it was a conservative that she fucked? Or does the part that he's a liberal make it worse?
No, well, if she was misrepresenting herself as being married while she was humping anybody, it would be bad. I don't
Okay.
give a shit that Destiny's
God,
cooming.
you are so obsessed with women.
Destiny's a coomer, but I don't care what he does. It's never been about the coomer. It's always been
I
about
do
the fact
see
that she
point
misrepresents
Andrew is
herself.
making. He's talking about hypocrisy. He's not saying if she wasn't married, I think he wouldn't care. I don't know if he would or would not, but I think he's arguing against the hypocrisy of Lauren, not so much like her sex life. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's irrelevant to it. It's that she's misrepresenting
Well,
herself
then
on the
call it
TradCon
argument.
side.
It's not hypocritical to have an opinion and post that opinion and then live your life and then maybe not have all of your morals 100% acted out in your life. You can have morals and not follow them 100% of that time. It doesn't make you a hypocrite. It makes you a human. It makes you not a perfect person. Everybody is human. And then to be digging into her personal lives, accusing her of like getting pregnant and having an abortion and
I
doing all
didn't
this
accuse
shit
her of
that's
any of
like-
that.
No, you didn't, but Rolo did. Which
I
is
don't
where
care
you're
what
getting-
Rolo does.
Rolo, okay, whatever. This whole
does it
like
have to do
Lawrence
with me?
Standard's pussy shit is just driving me up a fucking wall.
Well, you know what would solve this? She could just answer the question, then we'd all know.
Who cares? Who
Well,
cares?
we care because she's misrepresenting herself. Like, why do you not understand this?
Who cares what she does with her vagina?
We care
Why?
because if you're a trad woman who's grifting and pretending that you're
grifting.
fucking married. Yes, she did. Not only did she made a video showing that she did. Literally
All
made a
she is
video
doing
about it
is she is living her life to the best of her ability.
with a wedding ring on, misrepresenting herself as married on the TradCon side. And you're just like, there's nothing to see here. These aren't the droids you're looking for.
Why don't we give any other guy? So we don't do this to men at all. So like for instance, Sneeko.
Well, I guess
Sneeko
women
says-
are more oppressed than Lauren.
Like,
Hey,
we don't do this
Well,
just in the red pill space. We are, yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
to be fair, Sneeko is being called a fake
Overall,
Muslim,
no,
like,
because
all the
That's
time.
why none of the women. That's why none of the conservative women followed any of the conservative men into these fucking spaces. That's why people like Andrew and Rolo are so ass mad about people like Lauren and Brittany, is they expected all the conservative women to follow them into the actual degeneracy that is red pill. Yeah. So obviously the conservative men are super mad, and
I don't
people
have
like
anything to do
Rolo
with the red pill.
and
Man.
all of your time gossiping now about like.
Oh,
which-
come on. Your entire show's about gossip, bro.
First of all, my entire show is not about gossip.
Oh,
I just
come
came back
on.
from Congress talking to Ro Khanna. What have you been doing? I know what you were doing, actually. You were on a stream with Rolo talking about me and Lauren because somebody told him to me right after my
Did you-
fucking interview with a sitting U.S.
Wild.
congressman. How are you going to say that our streams are the
Wild.
same? Come
And
on.
bro,
You know-
your
you
most
noticed
of your
that
stuff, you
on
put your
the
public
you just-
life.
you just had-
You
just had
can't
two
put your
lawyers.
public
You just
life
had
on
two-
display and then
you just had
pretend that it's
two-
not fair game to talk about it, Destiny.
You had two bar pass attorneys arguing some legal matter, and then when it was your turn, when it was the man's turn to talk, you gossiped. You know,
You
how
brought
fucking
no,
embarrassing
you
that is?
gossiped. You brought it up. I didn't.
I brought up Lauren Southern
No, you brought up Rolo for some
Because
reason.
he's
So
in
I
your chat right
went ahead
now.
and asked the question.
because he's in your chat talking right now. It was this
He
conversation.
wasn't talking to me.
I'm sorry. Is Lauren in my chat talking? Am I missing her messages?
What does that have to do with the price
No,
of tea in
I'm
China?
not. I'm not.
Not the other Lauren, the one that I had the abortion
Yeah.
with, multiple abortions and secret children. I guess.
Yeah, I never accused you of that.
Anyway, Alex, was this relevant?
Yeah.
Go back to abortion.
I enjoyed it because it was funny. You guys got heated, but yeah, it's absolutely not relevant. What Destiny does with his dick. Let's redirect back to the initial topic. But it seems like you guys are kind of like I don't know. Like, do you guys have anything more to add on this? Feels like you
I
guys.
think
are
it's
not
really hard to quantify. Like on
Yeah.
both, if anybody's like going to come out the door swinging, like men have it harder, women have it harder. I think it's kind of dishonest. Like we all have our own struggles right now, and I think women have caught up or surpassed men in a lot of ways. So to sit here and say that like women have it, harder than men, when it probably wasn't part of the legal analysis, but like you look at affirmative action and women are destroying men in school now. Like that was probably a part of the rationale. That was probably a part of like at least the American public's feeling on it. So yeah, I feel like having a hard answer one way or another is kind of silly.
Okay. Yeah, just to also, since we're kind of wrapping up, I'll go back to the thing that you guys were discussing. I had some thoughts on, which is the hypothetical that Lauren laid out about like one innocent man versus 100 guilty men.
No, it wasn't even a hypothetical. That was just like as an expression. It was a saying. It's to highlight the genius of the American legal system. I don't
Okay.
even want to go into that further.
So then the question I would ask to everyone is, what do you think, like a ballpark, or what that ratio should be? Should be 1-for-1? Like obviously,
That's a good question.
like there's like, if you go really hard in the legal system, right, you make it really, really fucking aggressive, then there's going to be some innocent people who can get caught up with it. If you go very loose, right, there's going to be less innocent people who get caught up in it, but there's going to be a lot more people walking. What do you think? Like, ideally, obviously, it's 0 innocent people, but that's not practical. From a practical perspective, what do you think that ratio roughly should be? Just anyone could start.
Right now, I'm obviously just coming up with an answer on the fly. I think probably, and maybe it might depend on the nature of the crime, but maybe on like the order of like 1 in 1,000. I can even see like 1 in 10,000.
It's like I spelled Barbary wrong. There's no E at the end.
One guilt. So you rather have one one innocent person going to jail.
Yeah, as long as like
versus-
1,000 or 10,000 are being convicted.
Okay.
As in like
something
like
okay.
that.
Wait. Oh, so yours is flipped, right? Or am I losing you?
Yeah, sure. Mine is like reversed.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. Also, I think like the one thing that none of you guys brought up is just how much money affects how good of an outcome you have in the legal system. It really comes down to like a huge amount of it is how much money you have, and if you have a lot of money, you'll have a much better outcome in the legal system than if you're poor. It's like not even close. Okay, let's go, Lauren, next.
It's very difficult for me to quantify it in a number. I would say more. I would say more than 100, obviously. Quantifying it in a number is extremely difficult for me.
It is very hard. Yeah.
Yeah, extremely difficult. I almost want to say more than 1,000, which is probably where it is at legitimately. So, I'm just going to stick with more than 1,000. Actually,
It's definitely not at 1,000. If you just go off like the
is it not? Do you not think it is? I think it is. For every crime committed, you think, first of all, I think most crimes don't even go report it. Like, first of all, you have to find them out, then you have to report it, and then you have to decide to prosecute it if there's enough
Wait, what
evidence.
crimes are we talking here? Are we talking like traffic infractions or like trespassing? Because like kids running through backyards.
I'm not talking about mine. I'm talking about like felonies and shit like that. Like if we just go off the death, what's it called? The death penalty, innocent people statistic. 4% of people, according to a study done.
You're asking how many crimes don't get caught?
No, not all. I don't know if that's what she's asking, but
So
yeah, I'm
for
talking.
every 100 people who commit a crime, I'd rather 100 guilty men go free than one innocent man be put in jail.
But you would want to loosen up the aggressiveness of the legal system, right?
So, like, I would want to make it as difficult as possible to put someone in prison. That
You wanna
being
change the
said,
number
I would
you
want.
said about?
So
Hold
like
on.
more
That being
difficult
said, I
than
would
you
like
think.
to prosecute more cases. I feel like we are, like, for instance, in Boston recently, they highlighted 15 statutes that they're just not going to prosecute anymore. And a lot of prosecutorial discretion is being used, especially in liberal states, to not I don't want that. I do want crimes to be prosecuted, but I do want it to be much more difficult to get a conviction.
So
Or
what
not much
kind of, how would you change, like, what would you change? Because you're talking about changing the fundament, like the pillar of our legal system, which is our evidentiary burden. How would you change that to make it more difficult to put people away? Is that what you're saying? Like, you have to be super so that you don't risk putting an innocent man away. That's what you're trying to say,
I mean,
right?
there are ways to change
like,
that. Like you can make the penalty for prosecutorial misconduct like fucking 20 years in jail. That would be one way, for example.
Well,
Yeah,
penalty can already be getting like disbarred. I mean, depending on the type of misconduct, right?
No, I know, but I'm just saying like there are ways to do what Lauren is saying. I'm not saying that what she's arguing for is good or bad, but there are ways to do that. Like again, like one of them is like prosecutorial misconduct, 25 years in jail. Guarantee you that will move the bar in one direction.
Is prosecutorial misconduct even that big of a thing for like
Yes.
people getting?
Yes, it happens pretty often, unfortunately.
Wait, can you?
What are
When you
the
say pretty often,
consequences?
what does that mean?
I don't have the exact statistic. I can look it up, but it's
No, I'm just curious. When you say pretty often, you're like in half of cases and like 1% of cases.
no, it's probably it's more than 5%, less than 30%, probably.
Okay, because that's a pretty. If like 25% of 1 in 4 cases has like significant prosecutorial misconduct that demands like review or not.
Yeah, I
just
can pull it up real quick. I've just heard. Yeah, so 30% actually. Official report found 406% as child welfare workers. Yeah, so 30%. This is not just prosecutors. Oh yeah, prosecutors is 30%. Law enforcement officers 35%. Forensic scientists 3%, good for them, and child welfare workers 2%.
Wait. Is this like when they're charged or when they're accused, or you're saying in 30% of all criminal trials?
Yeah, the prosecutor is doing something that's unethical or illegal, or is doing something shady, basically.
Are you
Can
not,
you link me
like,
that? That's
Brady
a-
violations and
Yeah,
shit
sure.
like
I can legit. I know.
That's a huge number.
I know. It's actually harder than it's larger than I thought. But yeah, sure. I'll just share my screen. So,
Are you talking about where prosecutorial misconduct was a factor in overturning something? Because I'm seeing that for that, where if something is overturned, in 30% of those cases, prosecutorial misconduct was the reason. That's different than in 30% of
So
cases in general.
I'm looking at what you're
This
looking.
is
I'm
another
just trying to
selection
read.
bias
Yeah, I'm just
thing.
trying to read what you're saying, but it's saying deliberately
But the
convicting
first one
the
was
innocent,
not correct.
exoneration. So it sounds like
It's
of all the
exoneration,
exonerations, 30%.
That's not in all cases. That's
Yeah.
out of exonerations where
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, it did seem a little high to me, but still, it's kind of up there. I mean, I would need to research what the.
That's because cases could only get overturned for like very select specific reasons, and one of them is prosecutorial.
That's true, but that doesn't also prove that then it's 30% of general. In general,
I didn't say that. But he's saying 30% seems pretty high, and I'm saying, well, no, because it's one of like only 3 options, so it's not that high.
I know, but he meant 30% is really high with the original. Was am I wrong?
That's what I initially thought. It did seem kind of high to me, but it's also kind of hard because unless the case goes to like. Gets like appealed, like how would they even know there's prosecutorial misconduct? It's like a chicken and egg type of problem.
Well, yeah, I mean most of the court process is like pretty open source, right? Like discovery, evidence is made available, all the motions can be seen by both sides. Like,
but who's gonna like unless the defense appeals the case and like pushes it further, like who's gonna see that?
Well, like what? Hold on, what are you not seeing?
What do you mean? Like if there's a case and there's some prosecutorial misconduct. And you have
but I'm asking, like, what kind of misconduct would you not see?
Like Brady violation,
withholding evidence. I mean, it could be any number of things. This is probably something Lauren's going to be better able to answer than me because I'm not like
Brady violation is essentially withholding evidence.
Yeah, so that would be one thing.
And you're saying that this is happening a lot and it's just not being caught. But where's your evidence for that?
She's laughing at you because it's hard to prove because you're basically asking for. It would be like saying,
that's
what are the number of unreported rape cases? I just
want to know where they're getting this because they said
you learned about this in law school too.
I understand, but that's what I mean. People are just conflating.
Go to professional responsibility,
and then you look at it, and it's 30% of it, like you said, exonerated cases. So, what percentage of cases do you think are actually cases, not cases being overturned, are actually there's prosecutorial misconduct happening, and where are you getting that number? That's what I want to know.
So, mine too. The feeling is probably between. My intuitive feeling is probably between 5 and like 15 or 20%. I would.
Okay, here's the question for the 2 lawyers. So withholding, especially exculpatory evidence, that sounds like some shit that can get you completely fucked. Do you think?
Violations?
Yeah, is that not or?
Yeah, it's a bad thing. You could. Many attorneys are still capable of practicing after, but you can be disbarred. I think. Can you be criminally prosecuted? I don't know if you could be criminally prosecuted, but you could absolutely.
Well, then question then. So what do you think is the percentage?
That's my question.
Yeah, what do you think are the percentage of like Brady Act violations or withholding like exculpatory evidence or whatever that you think prosecutors are engaged with?
And then so I want to know where you're getting what percentage you think.
And also you're depending on the Brady violation, and like your intent and the egregiousness of it, the violations are very, very different. Sometimes the case just goes on and sometimes the Brady violation isn't even significant enough to overturn the case, even if they're aware of the Brady violation and they show it. So like if let's say you're convicted of a crime and then you later prove that there was a Brady violation, but that Brady violation, like let's say they
has to have substantially, like I know what you mean. It has to have affected the case enough for that to be a reason to overturn it, for sure. But I'm asking you what percentage of cases even, and that's for a good reason. If it's a little tiny thing that wouldn't have even changed, that's what the courts are looking at. Would this have actually change the outcome of the case? If the answer is no, then the case the outcome shouldn't be changed.
Well, honestly, if you know that the prosecutor is holding something back and they're like, okay, that wouldn't have been enough to overturn the case, but it was relevant and therefore it's a Brady violation, and you only caught one of those, I feel like if you see smoke, there's fire. I have an issue.
Of the time is this happening? That's my question to you.
I don't know. That's one of those things.
I can give you a little bit more of a number because
and I never pretended to give you a stat on that. So don't throw your hands up in like a disgruntledness.
Well, I think I think the frustration is that because earlier when this number was provided, the number was high enough that, in my opinion, it undermines our entire legal system. If I think that 1 out of 3 prosecutors are committing severe ethical violations by withholding exculpatory evidence, that's like what we have like a banana republic at that point. But if it's like 1% are engaged in Brady violations where sometimes somebody fucks up or there's some evidence that they should have brought up or they should have presented their side, but they didn't think it was relevant and it was, that's a severely different thing. So
that's my point.
I do think it's significantly higher than 1%. Up to 30%, I don't think so. I don't think it's
30% did seem kind of high to me. I was just going off that statistic, but yeah, you're right. I mean, it is a chicken and egg problem.
It actually would affect the outcome. They shouldn't do that.
No, because if a prosecutor is doing something intentionally that's either illegal or unethical, that's a problem in of itself, regardless of whether that would affect the case or not, right?
And
If
there
you
are
don't-
consequences
No,
for
part
that.
of me-
in our-
Well,
Okay,
okay, but here,
Austin,
you get
let
sanctioned
me-
for that.
wait,
Can I
let me
answer Jasmine's question really quick though?
Fine.
The reason that I don't think judges, so with PR, in the appellate level, you're only going to overturn a case, even if there's a Brady violation. If it wasn't enough to sway the case, then they're not going to appeal the case. I disagree with that. I don't think that's the way the law should be, even though that's the way it is, because I feel like if the prosecutors are withholding some evidence that we find, we don't know what we don't know. We don't know what evidence the prosecutor withheld and was never exposed.
Usually
If you see some smoke, there's probably a fire. And so to encourage prosecutors to never commit Brady violations, they should make it so that if there's any Brady violation, then the case should be appealed, in my opinion. And that would encourage prosecutors to be giving all of the evidence over as much evidence over as possible.
If it's
We usually
intentional,
know exactly what
Wait,
was
hang
withheld,
on,
and what they're looking at. That's what the judge is
Wait.
looking at, though. The judge is looking at what was usually withheld. And yeah, you can't go into the mind and see everything, but it's not that every time there's a Brady violation, we have no idea what they did. The
Well,
judge
hang on. So first of all, I think that it should be much more than like the case gets appealed. Like if the prosecutor does something intentionally illegal, they should go to jail or they should get punished. But here's a really interesting thing that I found. So this is a survey that was conducted, and basically they looked at 5 diverse states over a 5-year period, 2004 to 2008, and identified 660 cases which court found prosecutors committed to misconduct, such as tampering with key evidence, withholding evidence from the defendant, or coercing a witness to give false testimony. Now, here's the really interesting part. Of the 660 cases examined, only 1 prosecutor accused of misconduct was disciplined. So it seems like the vast majority of them actually get away with it.
What was the numbers that you said of the 600 cases? How many admitted to, or on the survey said they did misconduct?
It didn't look at how many cases they looked at. They just said they looked at 5 states over a 5-year period, and they identified 660 cases. And out of those 660 cases, only 1 prosecutor that was accused was actually disciplined.
disciplined at all, so the rest weren't even sanctioned, nothing.
Well, it sounds like they weren't discovered, is what he's saying.
Oh,
That
he's saying
didn't
they weren't
know.
discovered. Okay.
Wait,
And-
were the violations discovered and the attorney still not reprimanded?
That it doesn't say.
That I don't think I think, Lauren, you know that we would be reprimanded for that. Especially
Honestly, I don't know, because I think I don't know if that's actually, if you actually would be
we get fucking sanctioned for
reprimanded.
everything. If we file a frivolous suit, like everything. You're saying that
frivolous
if we-
suit, yeah. You
Yeah, but I'm
can
saying
get-
you're
not
saying if we
always.
engage in
Not always.
misconduct. No,
you
you're
can
right.
you can get sanctions for filing frivolous suits, but that's usually if you filed multiple frivolous suits and the court wants to
It's up
encourage.
to a lot of times the judge's discretion. That's correct. But you're saying
Well,
that
it
if
sounds
the-
like it sounds like for here, what could happen is like theoretically there might have been some text message that maybe the prosecution discovers, or some line of text that they see they discover. They're like, this isn't relevant, and it turns out that like maybe the defense would have liked that, but it's not a big
It's
deal.
not, yeah,
so like
and
in this case, the judge isn't going to be like, I'm coming down on you hardcore.
yeah,
They just like
exactly.
whatever.
That's,
Never mind.
I
But
think
that's
it's good that
but
judges are looking at, because we don't want every single thing to go back and
Hold
every
on.
single
That
thing
is
to
a
be overturned on
perfect
what's kind of-
example. That is a perfect example that Destiny just gave, because the as a prosecutor, you shouldn't be determining whether or not you think it's good for the defense or not. You just need to determine whether there's any relevance at all and hand it over. And
You're
if they're
right,
not
but what I mean
encouraged
is
to do that, if you were to
you shouldn't
change
do
the
it.
law
You
so
shouldn't
that if
do
there
it.
were Brady violations whatsoever, then prosecutors would be more encouraged to turn over literally any evidence that they have, including that text message that might appear irrelevant at the time, especially if they were to get sanctioned, or we should start sanctioning, like do mandatory sanctions for attorneys who don't turn over evidence.
I'm not
Whether or not
opposed to
it's
mandatory
intentional.
sanctions for, but the thing is, as you know, there's so much little stuff that comes in with this that if
Turn
you're
it
like,
all over.
What?
Like how hard you've worked
Hold
as a
on,
clerk.
hold on. She's bad explaining. Okay, what she's trying to say is that if you're a prosecutor, you should just turn over everything. That you should don't ask a question. If you do any type of research, anything, that all of it should be turned over to the defense. And she's saying that if you make the punishments sufficiently high enough for ethical violations related to Brady, whatever the fuck, that if you make it high enough, then prosecutors will just turn over everything instead of them trying to decide what's appropriate to turn over or not. Because she doesn't want a prosecutor making a decision for the defense about what evidence might be relevant to them.
Aren't
That's
there
what
states that have to do that anyway?
Not that I'm aware of.
Because I know there's in different states. Like I know, for instance, in Arizona, you do have to turn in more than just what would be relevant or look bad for the.
I'm
other
in
side.
Miami with you, Chica.
What? I'm not. I don't live in Miami. I'm just visiting.
You're in Miami right now.
Yeah, but I don't live here.
Okay,
What was
but
it?
I don't. live in
Did I miss what you
Arizona.
said?
Yeah, but I don't live in Arizona, so you just okay.
Yeah, but
Never
that
mind.
was giving you an example of like that there are different rules. And a lot of times, if I remember correctly, Arizona is an example of a state where you don't just have to turn in your evidence that you think will negatively impact the other side. Because some states that is the standard. Some states you actually do have to put forth all your evidence anyway. And I do agree, if you don't do that, it's wrong. But I don't necessarily think that a bunch of cases, I think it's good that the judge is looking at, okay, how relevant was this? Would this have changed the outcome of the case? If it wouldn't have changed the outcome of the case, I'm just saying maybe it's not a good idea to completely bring.
I understand where you're coming from. Here's, and I genuinely get where you're coming from.
Hold on. What Lauren is saying is that like Lauren agrees with you that it might be bad to do that, much the same way that we probably we shouldn't overturn a case just because the evidence was gotten in a bad way, right? You could say like, well, we know this guy did it, but we wouldn't say that. We would say, well, no, the principle of doing the process from the very start is so important that we will throw out those cases. So she's saying that the penalty should be so high that we're just going to throw out all Brady violations because we want people to be acting the best manner possible. Even if we know some people might be guilty, we would still do that in a court of law. Like, for instance, if a cop pulls you over, doesn't read you he doesn't Mirandize you, he doesn't do whatever, right? That's the argument.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. I don't necessarily disagree with that, but I don't think that there's like a mass problem of lawyers just getting away with this and getting no
There is
penalty.
no. Like, for instance, remember in, was it Massachusetts where they had the attorney, I'm forgetting. It was with the drug.
I don't want one case. I want you to show me that this is like a widespread
This was
problem.
like a serious issue. The Dougal case where the woman
I remember Civ Pro. I'm trying to remember. It was a Civ Pro case you're talking about? Dougal?
I'll let this go for a few more minutes before we wrap up.
Responsibilities. It would be an evidence case. It's a newer case, so it's probably not going to be in your textbooks.
Oh,
but
okay. I graduated in
professor
21.
Possibly would have gone over it with you. It's essentially this woman. She worked in the evidentiary, like the chemical. She was supposed to be testing the drugs for the prosecution and like determining, oh, this is cocaine, it's this amount, and that's used for the prosecution, and that's relied upon in court. She was actually snorting most of the drugs and then just like signing forms saying that
what was did she not get in trouble? Is that what you're saying? Or
the attorney who like used her shit for years and then didn't want all of her cases overturned, figured out that she had been doing that and then didn't tell the defense about all of the issues. And then like,
all right, guys, one more minute on this before we wrap up. So 1 more minute warning.
And kept trying to mitigate. So they kept trying to change the time period of how long. Oh, she was only snorting coke for like the last 3 months. And then you find out, oh no, the prosecutors knew that she had been snorting coke for like a year and a half. So,
Okay, so
all
what
of their
was the-
cases for a year and a half involving any of the drug evidence that she had been on, all of those cases are essentially should be overturned, but the prosecutors withheld that. And that prosecutor,
what was like for this
Someone
case?
should
what was the
introduce her
black
to
letter law
Zerpa.
that came out of it? Because if you read it, that means that something changed. What was the black letter law that came out of the case? Give me the Quimby rundown of this case. Don't just tell me the facts.
Yeah, because it sounds like everything you're saying is wrong, and we agree it's wrong, and none of it should
so
have happened.
what
right?
was the
my issue, I'm
What
not
was
going to
the
give
case?
you
I'll
the
look it up.
IRAC for this, but
I want an IRAC.
the issue that I had was this, that she didn't receive sufficient sanctions.
So what,
you're
do you
saying
remember what sanctions she received?
I don't remember what sanction. I just
All right,
remember
anyway.
she didn't.
All right, guys.
she was
I'm
able
gonna.
to
Oh,
continue
hang on.
her
All right.
attorney. She was able to keep her attorney's license. That's
you-
what blows
She
my
was able
mind.
to keep it.
All
Can
right,
you?
guys. We really went deep into this lawyer talk. I think that we just found Zerka's next girlfriend. But anyway, let's do final closings. Just
Wait,
you
real
can
quick.
really-
Did this happen in Massachusetts?
Yeah.
Okay, it
was
sounds like she got disbarred.
She was disbarred.
For violating thousands of criminal defendants' due process rights by failing to disclose key evidence related to a
Yeah,
government
this
chemist
is
who stole
literally-
drugs from a state crime
So I was
lab.
like, what is the why did you read this case in class? Because we read every case for a reason. It's because we're trying to get the black letter law and the reasoning of why you're in law school. So don't just tell me the facts.
No,
The
I'm not in law
facts
school.
are
I
so bad.
graduated.
The facts are so bad. I agree. The facts are really bad. And it looks like she was disbarred.
Okay.
Well, I think she should probably be much more than disbarred. But anyway, I do want to wrap
yeah.
up. Let's.
And I don't even think, and I wonder when she was disbarred. Because it was later. I don't think it was at the time.
I read the
Okay,
case, but-
we're just gonna, you can, in your closing statements, you can literally like talk about anything, whatever it is that that's on your mind in terms of this whole discussion. And then I just want to get through some super chats and then we're done. Let's start off with you, Andrew, since we haven't heard from you in like a few years, and then we'll just keep going clockwise.
Yeah, my name is Andrew Wilson. I'm the host of The Crucible. Thank you for having me tonight. I always enjoy these types of engagements and these kinds of debates. That's it.
Cool. All right, Corey.
This was super enjoyable, and I think I learned a lot about the United States legal system that I didn't know before, which I appreciate. I guess to quickly close up the actual topic, it's hard and it's nuanced, but I think slightly on the whole, women are more oppressed. Maybe by like 51% or 50.1%, but I can see it either way. Again, super grateful to be here and to be invited. You can find me on Twitch, twitch.tv CoreyCampbell84. I'm a biochemist. I cover science, research, and news. And you can find me on other platforms, X, YouTube, Instagram. It's Corey Campbell. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Huskies are 100% oppressed. Okay, Lauren, you're next.
Someone wanted me to point out that Rittenhouse had Brady violations, but it doesn't really matter because he was found not guilty anyways. But my point, I had a great time on the show. Love being here. Thanks for having me. Good topics. You can find me on X, on YouTube, and Instagram under the moniker Lauren De Laguna.
All right, Destiny and Gang.
I do feel like men were oppressed because I feel like we had like 20% of the talking time on this platform compared to the women here. So I would just like to formally enter that as a complaint.
To be fair, Destiny didn't tell me I was walking into this at all. I thought I was just chilling with him, and I had no idea. But I guess I just realized, Alex, you did reach out to me, and I guess me and Andrew might have our own debate. And I'm willing to have chat with you, Lauren, too, about anything.
Yeah.
But so thanks for having me. This was fun and unexpected.
Yeah, it's a weird coincidence because we were literally in the process of setting up a debate.
Yeah, I had no idea.
You wound up on a debate with you and Andrew. Okay, so really quickly, I just want to get through super chats, so you guys bear with me for a second. Shout out to Andrew. Don't forget, Trollo couldn't answer what Tate took him from made Bruin proof fallacy and red herring. Lol, Trollo. Okay. Never forget about those women protesting Kavanaugh. Okay. Yo. Okay, what else do we have? I'm not going to read any questions that like are particularly insulting for the guests, so just FYI. Question for Torcha. Alex, you said that drag cons are undercover feminists. How can that be when I actually never said that? I don't believe I said that. And also, Torcha's not here, but appreciate the super chat. Okay, what else do we have? In production. Okay. In projects production, the goal is 3.4 defects per 1 million cases. A legal system should strive to be at least equal the aims of iPhone factories. Okay. I mean,
I love when people make random, like somebody, I saw a TikTok where somebody was like, we update our phones like every year. So therefore we should update the Constitution every year. And I was like, what? Like those aren't what? Okay. Sorry. They're not comparable, but go ahead.
You're good. I appreciate big thanks to all the guests for showing up. This was a fun debate, even though we got off track quite a few times. I think it was fun. I enjoyed the tangents. Big thanks. So guys, go check out each one of the guests. You will all their links will be in the description in the next hour. Destiny's channel is pretty bomb. I've been there many times. I'm not familiar. Andrew's channel is also really good. I've been there a lot. I'm not familiar with Lauren's channel, Corey's channel as much, but check it out. Doesn't hurt anything. I just met you like 2 weeks ago. But yeah, cool. I appreciate the debate and you guys showing up. I think this was fun. And yeah.
I love you, Alex.
Take it easy.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hey, Corey.
Yeah, what's up?
Yeah, get a hold of me either through Discord or through Twitter because I'd like to talk to you some more.
I'll put you guys in touch.
Yeah. And actually, I'd like to maybe have a conversation with Lauren about abortion because I think there's something to explore there.
Well, actually, I have a guy that you should talk to named Zen Shapiro on that topic.
Sure.
That's how Andrew got me into the Crucible ecosystem. Start off with Zed Shapiro.
I think I know
Yeah.
it was